everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Bitcoin and Altcoin Trading Talk. I'm Joe with Coinigy here, joined with the wonderful Mr. Brian Beamish. Thank you again for coming on.
Hello, everyone. I do have the YouTube page up here, and it says "Waiting for Coinigy." Ooh, and there it is.
Woo!
Awesome.
There we go.
Hello, everybody. Big Wave. Hi. How you doing? I'm reporting in my drinking hat.
There you go. Yes. From Germany.
Yeah, it's springtime for Hitler and Germany. Is it just me or is it YouTube?
On the frames per second to try to say maybe.
Anyway, yeah, we've got Adam. Adam's on the call there.
I know.
Good to have you on board. Let us know if you can hear the audio and if the picture is blurry or not. It might just be that I have this setting set to a really low resolution.
I'd lower the frames per second there. There's an echo.
Yeah, interesting. The auto setting is like 144p, so if I probably bring that up a bit. Yeah, there we go. So I just changed it to 360.
Who's the echo coming from, Adam? I don't mind like giving some issue.
Says pick is fine. Bit of an echo though. Okay? Brian, audio is good. Oh, so we had this problem before. How far away is your microphone from you, Joe?
Hello. Right here. I don't know. Maybe it is that. Give me.
And then on your Video Ninja, do you have that muted?
There you go.
Sometimes if you don't have the video Ninja thing muted, it'll sound echoey.
I'm going to give this one shot here. Properties. Switch this to my MacBook Pro mic. All right. Can you still hear? Is the audio somewhat better?
Coming in loud and clear on the Zoom call, but
Okay.
of course this is a...
There you go. Okay, so it is the microphone. All right. You know, you get the nice microphone and it goes. So, all right, we're going with the regular MacBook Pro mic, and we are live.
All right.
Thank you, Adam, once again.
Yeah, Adam. I think he's booking for what do they call it in Hollywood when they or like in New York and stuff when they have assistants on the production? There's a name for that. Is it?
Well, anyways. Everyone, thank you for coming back and joining us for another episode. And so I did my homework, Brian. You know, at last episode we said we were going to take some time off. Yeah,
I gave you a bunch of assignments, didn't I?
It gave me some assignments. So I had to watch the Money Masters, and I did that, and then also did some fundamental analysis and some research on some coins. So we're going to kind of talk about those, and then I know we've got a lot from Twitter. We got some people reaching out there, so we got a handful of coins there, but Money Masters kind of blew my mind a little bit, just seeing how far back some of this talk has gone, and back to some of the first presidents that they were predicting this. Like, who would have thunk? And they said that this was
actually, and this is, a lot of people that I talk to, it's like 3.5 hours long, but you have to watch it a few times.
Yeah.
Actually, this goes all the way back to the days of JC and the temple.
Yeah.
And him getting angry at the money changers working in the temple, who were pilgrims coming to worship at temple.
Yeah.
The Jews in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
So these, and that's why he calls them the money masters, right? These banksters, these money changers, the money masters, whatever you want to call them. But I mean, they have a long, long history of just sort of skimming off the top. And they make their whole livelihood. Often, Rothschild's basically the richest family in the world, the mantra.
Yep.
And interesting how I noticed that YouTube video just cut in there. So probably YouTube has an algorithm. As soon as you say the word Rothschilds, all of a sudden
it says no more data for you.
Yeah, like everything starts to fall apart. So, and sadly, that's how deep this stuff goes.
Yeah.
And the more computerized our world becomes, the more they are able to exert control over us, which is it's a little bit sad, really.
Yeah.
But you got to hand it to the Americans. They tried, like, because keep in mind, my country is actually the people like the Rothschilds, the Bank of England, and all that. The to Upper Canada, to what is now colonies of the British Empire. So this has a long, long history, and it's interesting is cutting in and out for me here, and there's no reason for that to happen.
Yeah. I mean, my CPU is fine too, so
Yeah, like Adam, are you seeing circly circles? I know a lot of people that watch my videos and my rants and stuff. They often comment that it
ours.
almost seems as though YouTube is trying intentionally to slow and make it so like people kind of give up on watching because I don't think Big Brother likes my tone. So I'll try my best to keep a civil tongue in my mouth. But anyway, great to see that the wool is being removed from your eyes,
Yeah.
and you're sort of learning how this world really works.
Adam says I have to watch that delay because it's kept skipping.
Yeah.
Oh, what? Didn't connect to the hard wire. Give me 1 second, Brian. I got the issue.
All right. Wi-Fi versus hardline internet connection issue. I don't know. Anyway, hopefully Joe comes back soon. But Adam, did you ever
We're back.
watch the Money
That should be
Masters
much
video?
better.
Beg your pardon?
That should be much better. I realized I forgot to hardwire it before the show there. We're good now.
Okay.
We're going full speed.
All right, cool. So anyway, the point, you're probably, like what's a really interesting education is the Knights Templar. Whoa, look at that, Mike.
That's what happened.
So, Adam says he watched it back in 2019. So, yeah. I mean, I'll throw it up on this screen just in case anybody watching this later on wants to get an education. And the good part about it is that, this guy's actually been barking about this now since the 1980s. So you can't argue that that this has just been made up just recently. This has basically been
The 1996 one is the one I watched.
yeah, okay. I mean, I think actually I don't know who these people are. And actually I wouldn't even be surprised if there's people who are trying to hijack this conversation. There he is. Can never remember what his name is, but kind of sad. There you are, William Still, I think was his name. But anyway, so the point here is, I can just, for whatever it's worth, I'll throw this link in the chat. Not quite sure what happens if people can actually see this chat when they watch the video back later on. But anyway, there is the link.
We'll comment if it's not there. We'll comment on the video.
All right, I'll send you. Where are you? There you are. So that's the link that I just posted. I just sent it to you there on Discord. So, and that's the 1996 one. Yeah.
Cool.
So the really cool story about banking was how Henry the First. You ever heard it? Did you remember the conversation about tally sticks?
Mm-hmm.
So that was one way to try and take the banksters out of the equation. I think it was Henry the First in England.
Yep.
He created the tally stick system. And interesting enough, I think you can actually make an argument that the usherance in of our new modern day banking system, this fiat currency system, actually started when mysteriously there was a fire in London that happened to have burned down all of the warehouses that stored all of the tally sticks.
Crazy how that works.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I don't know. It was, and actually, it's interesting in this video. He even shows you the tally stick that one of the banksters in the Bank of England used to buy his share of the original Bank of England. when it was first established around 1697, I think it is, somewhere around there. And you want to know something that really freaks you out? Is if you literally look on your calendar every 80 years, they go through this great. Have you ever heard Klaus use the expression the Great Reset?
Yeah. That's
That's
the 80
basically what
years.
they do. Every 80 years, they just add another zero onto everybody's currency and then start the whole damn game all over again. And you can even see it happening as we speak. And I actually think you could make the argument that Bitcoin could very easily be our 21st century version of Tally Sticks to try and break this model. And of course, you see what Bitcoin's been doing over the past 5, 10 years. I think it's moved up a little bit, hasn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. What blew my one thing that was kind of crazy to me was that paper money how it started. I had never known that fact of that it was because a receipt. It started as a receipt that they were for your gold.
Yeah, yeah. And really think of what and the interesting way to think about money is what do you absolutely need money for? And there's actually only one thing in this world that you absolutely must have some sort of money system for. And
For
that's
goods and
paying
services.
taxes.
Okay, yeah,
It's
tax.
paying taxes.
Yeah.
It's the only reason why you would have money. Because you can't go to like your local government and pay them a cow to pay your taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So what they did historically, of course, is people would pay in like gold as a sort of form of currency, but you can't really lug around like 1,000 pounds of gold or whatever, if you're a wealthy guy. So that was you went to the banks to deposit your gold, and the best way to think about what a classic bank really was is do you ever see the Harry Potter movies?
Oh,
And
yeah.
when he goes to the bank and he goes to his personal vault and he's got tons of like gold coins and stuff all in his little personal vault.
Yep.
I mean, that's really what banks really are, or what they were. And it's fascinating because when you listen to Chair Powell nowadays, he's actually trying to redefine what banks are. And what he would prefer now is that banks actually are nothing more than lending institutions and has absolutely nothing to do with like safety deposit boxes. When that's, if you think about a bank like Brinks, right, and all that, and big safes, and, it's tough for robbers to knock over a bank because of the safe. That's why people actually put their money in a bank because it was relatively safe because somebody would steal it from you. Anyway, so yeah. I mean, if anything, we're just scratching the rabbit hole surface here for you. Don't want to corrupt you too much, and I don't want you to lose faith in society and how the whole darn thing sort of works, but I think on balance, if you really want to understand how, it behooves you to understand where we've come from and why the system works the way that it does. And this video, I think, does a fantastic job.
It did. It was really eye-opening in a lot of aspects of just how it started and how we got to where we are. And even that's from 27 years ago, 28 years
Yeah.
ago. So,
well, as I said, every 80 years. So you can go back in 1940. I don't know. Were they fighting in Europe in the 1940s? Does that sound at all familiar?
Yep. Maybe a
What a
whole world
coincidence.
war.
And then you go back 80 years from that. I don't know. Did something happen in your country in the 1860s?
Yeah, maybe a little civil something.
Yeah. And then, 80 years prior to that, did something happen in your country again?
Yep.
In fact,
getting the country together.
The sort of antecedents to the Great Reset in the 1940s was Woodrow Wilson was famously said he was the one, unfortunately, that let the central banks take over the U.S. government in 1913, I think it was. And actually, what's interesting is if you look at from 1913, the actual value of money, it's remarkable, like the inflation. Because keep in mind, inflation isn't a real thing, by the way. It's a completely made up concept. And if you had to pay your taxes in tally sticks or, cows to the king and stuff like that, and there were no bankers involved, then a cow is a cow is a cow, right? If your tax is like you owe one cow per year, that's your tax. But it's not like it's going to be like next year you owe 1.5 cows. And then the year after that, 1.73 cows. I mean, that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So what we have to understand, and it's almost impossible to educate the public on, is that inflation is a completely made up concept. And it is nothing more than the banker's tax. Do you remember what was famously said about the Rothschilds when somebody toured a house that the Rothschilds were building in the French countryside? Do you remember that from the movie?
I remember. Jog my memory. So I watched it on the plane.
This reporter toured the house that the Rothschilds were building, and he said, a king couldn't even live like this. This must be the Rothschilds' property. Because kings don't even have this kind of money.
Yes.
And it's literally the Rothschilds basically just tax the world through this concept called inflation. Yeah. And it's criminal, it really is. But,
they made their money doing it.
Pardon me?
But they made their money doing it.
Well, and it is a hallmark. Like I said, this goes all the way back to the days of JC.
Yep.
So it's tragic. It is a function of the human species, which is kind of a shame. But the good part about it is, I believe, and this is my theory. Of course, I don't think a lot of people in this space believe this, but nonetheless, Brian, you like my tinfoil hat? But I believe George Bush Sr. understood exactly what was going on. Because Ronald Reagan, interestingly enough, when he was the governor of California, he actually publicly came out and said government should not spend more money than they bring in. There's no reason why they're doing this, deficit spending. But and of course, this was through the 1970s, because it was absolutely runaway hyperinflation through that decade. And sadly, I think we have to go through it again. And then all of a sudden, when he got elected president, he was going to command the hard money. All right, we're going to, get us back on the gold standard and do all that kind of fun stuff. And all of a sudden, Ronald Reagan was shot. And it turns out, actually, the guy who shot him actually has connections to the banking industry. Go figure. But the point there is that literally from the day after Reagan was shot, his tone completely changed. And then he became absolutely ridiculous, government spending, to the point where his vice president, George Bush Sr., who was one of these hard money guys, he actually called all of this nonsense of deficit spending voodoo economics. I don't know if you've ever heard that term before. So I believe that, and the irony of all of this is that actually Jerome Powell actually worked for George Bush Sr. So this is the irony of all of this, is that I believe that Mr. Powell was put in place under the understanding that he was not going to get suckered into sort of the whole banker thing, because he was a hard money guy, but he got suckered into this whole MMT kind of thinking.
How long is
modern monetary theory, interest rates will never go up again, and all that kind of stuff.
How long has Jerome Powell been in his respective role?
He was appointed after, I think Granny. She was the last chair, Fed chair. And she took over. That's Yellen. And oh, by the way, how does the expression go? When they're crying, you should be buying, and when they're yelling, what should you be doing?
Selling.
So how ironic, eh?
Yeah.
And since she's been on the scene, the value of the U.S. dollar has just been an absolute train wreck, right? But anyway, that's kind of a funny joke.
Yeah.
Only silly trader banker guys would get a chuckle out of that.
So yeah, I just looked it up. He's been in office since started in 1992, but with President George H.W. Bush. And then
he was part of the Carlyle Group.
Yeah, that was when he was the Secretary of Treasury and Domestic Finance.
Yeah, and he made all his money through the Carlyle Group, which is fascinating. I mean, that's a whole interesting side because, in essence, I think what happens in the United States of America is there's actually two power bases. There is the CIA and the industrial military complex. That's one power base. And then there is the banking cartel, banker elite. And ironically enough, they're actually very in bed with the Democrat Party. And like I said, the industrial military complex and the, George Bush, I mean, how deep down the rabbit hole you want to go. George Bush Sr. was on the ground in Dallas, Texas, the day JFK was assassinated. Now, why on earth would George Bush Sr. be in Dallas the day JFK was assassinated? So, I mean, how deep down the rabbit hole do you want to go? But the point here is I think there's these two power bases, and actually Eisenhower himself, last day of power, he even sort of warned the American public, there are these two power bases that are basically controlling the country. And he knew full well who killed JFK, but he wasn't going to come out and say anything because he would have been killed next. And these people play hardball,
I'd say.
So anyway, let's approach this from the perspective that I believe George Bush Sr., part of the CIA, knew that the banker elite class was in power and they were going to do one of these great resets. And then, oh, gee whiz, what a coincidence. Literally the year that his son left office as president of the United States, and basically the Democrats were going to come full charge and take over the U.S. government, Bitcoin all of a sudden just appears out of nowhere. That's an interesting coincidence, don't you think?
Coincidence.
So my theory all along is that Bitcoin's actually a CIA pet project. And that, I might even argue that a guy like Jerome Powell, he probably owns a whole shitload of Bitcoin. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of those guys own a lot of shitload of Bitcoin. But it's kind of interesting. This past week, I was, doing some research online. Actually, who's one of the biggest whales in Bitcoin is actually the U.S. government. So the U.S. government owns a lot of Bitcoins. And do you remember Silk Road? Does that sound familiar?
Yep.
And Albright, the guy who founded it,
yeah.
I think he's still in jail. He founded the Silk Road Exchange, and he was up to some pretty cheeky stuff.
Ross Albright.
Ross, right?
Yeah.
But they threw the book at him. I mean, he will never get out of jail. Why? Because they want his Bitcoins, right? They seized his Bitcoins.
Yeah. Let's see. He's got life imprisonment without possibility of parole.
Yeah, for running a cryptocurrency exchange? That seems a bit odd. Doesn't that seem like a bit of a harsh sentence?
Yeah, because they got him with distributing narcotics by the means of the internet, conspiracy to distribute, narcotic conspiracy to commit money laundering, conspiracy
the big
fake
one
IDs,
was
computer hacking.
There was some guy that was, because keep in mind, Silk Road was pretty shady, right?
Definitely.
So one guy kind of screwed over Ross, and they actually had him on tape, like doing hiring a contract out on him to kill a guy. So that was the big thing, right? You're not allowed to go and get contracts out on people. That's not good business.
Yeah. Well,
But I mean, that's the thing. If anything, it's better that I sit here in my stupid little drinking hat, and I live my sort of I fly under the wire. I mean, I'm comfortable financially, but I'm certainly not rich, and I certainly don't have any political power. All I do is bitch and complain about substitute drama teachers. So if anything, it's probably better because I know too much and I could get myself into trouble if I ever got myself into that sort of vein. And I could probably be knocked off pretty easily because I got such a big fat loud mouth. As I tell everybody, and actually, I honestly think that it's sort of one of the saving things for me. Is the only reason why I'm doing what I'm doing here, the only reason actually why I'm even involved in Bitcoin, is I lost my wife in 2011. And it breaks my heart every day. Looking at pictures of her right now. And I believe that she came to me from the other side and said, Brian, you have an opportunity to really make a positive difference in this world.
and
And
you are.
the only reason why I know that this was real was because she also said, but Brian, you have to learn how to listen. And I'm not a very good listener. I love to talk, but oh man, I'm pretty bad at listening. So anyway, that's how I know it's for real. Because I remember even in the dream, I went, man, I got all upset and stuff when she said that to me. I mean, that dream was like 10 years ago, and I still remember like it was yesterday. So, anyway.
Yeah. Well,
Okay,
you
so
are making
we're going
one.
to make a positive difference in this world. How the hell can we do that?
Speaking
tonight?
of which, so you were one of my tasks was kind of doing some fundamental analysis and doing my own research on just a couple projects, some that we've talked about.
What
But
I would love is if you could create a portfolio page for yourself on Coinigy.
okay,
And then we could actually like pull up that page and do the show off of that.
I'll make
Sort of checked in with your picks and how are they looking technically? Are they ready to be bought? That kind of thing. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And then we could actually use this as sort of a pseudo education, but also pseudo demonstration of the Coinigy platform.
For sure. I'm making note. I'll have that built out for our next one. Just some of these that I've got. So we've made note of that. But obviously the first one that we've discussed in the past is that one big trade I had at Phantom FTM.
So the question here is, can we do any fundamental search off of the Coinigy platform?
So
like if we type in this symbol, can we get data
Yes.
on
So if you go to Explore up in the upper left,
Explore?
and then cryptocurrencies,
All right.
and
Hey,
then
there we go.
in the search there, right next to week, yeah, and search FTM.
FTM.
Yeah. There you go, that top one.
All right.
You got those longs and shorts.
I think I remember I owned this last cycle. We ended up selling all of the. Have you ever seen my funny little? I don't know. Have you ever seen my Twitter page?
Oh yeah.
And it's my personal one. I mean, we set up a Twitter page for the company. But I have a personal Twitter page, and actually, this little icon here, we started with like $500, and actually, the ultimate ending balance was I think about 300,000 or 400,000. We ended up liquidating it, but I do remember I had Phantom in this, but we completely liquidated that and started fresh. So let's see, maybe we can do this again this cycle. There's no reason why we could. So let's see how that goes. Anyway, so the point is this Phantom. There we are.
So,
right, so what do we got here?
Big reason what originally drew me in is that I felt that it had like an actual purpose where it has its own proof of stake mechanism, and then the purpose of it is to achieve. They can have about 20,000 transactions per second, while like Bitcoin can take like 10 minutes to process transactions, and Ethereum's 12 to 14 seconds. And it's basically non-existent gas fees to operate in its network. And so
there's no gas fees?
Yeah. And so that was really what like drew me in at first was the speed of it because I hadn't really seen anything like that before. And if you click on launch advanced mode, that button up there will take you right into the platform. You can just exit that out. You know, yeah. But Brian should always have a 2FA enabled.
Yeah, yeah, I should, shouldn't I? So maybe after the show I'll get working on it.
But
This is
anyhow,
on Polo?
yeah, I
Where
think
do you
my
think
I had
we
mine on
should,
like
where do you think is the most data?
feel KuCoin maybe
Do we want to do
or
versus USD, USDT,
yeah.
USDC?
Tried Kraken or let me see.
There's
KuCoin.
KuCoin, but that's versus Tether. That probably doesn't have that much data. Let's see. Oh, there you go.
There we go. So yeah, that's a good one for us to look
Okay.
at.
Yeah.
But
So, like if we were going to do some fundamental analysis, some of the questions that I would have are all around this kind of stuff. So,
okay.
how many coins are outstanding?
It's a lot.
2.7 billion. So you always have to ask yourself, and this is the one thing that I don't think that people really understand when it comes to something like what is XRP ultimately going to go to. There's a lot of coins out on XRP, right? Ripple.
Mm-hmm.
Suppose maybe we could even just do another one just to show you. So, like I hear people saying, oh yeah, XRP is going to go to like, $1,000. But just try and put that into perspective. So, here is that Ripple. And XRP going, if it went to $1,000 a coin, look how many coins there are. I mean, that's a big number, right?
It's funny. Data's all messed up because it all just got relisted on some of these exchanges a couple days ago.
Yeah.
They all took them down.
Well, and then, and then that's a whole issue with crypto unto itself, right? Is I actually think that these centralized exchanges are the Achilles heel of crypto.
Mm-hmm.
We can somehow get to beyond these centralized exchanges, hopefully get these decentralized exchanges. And kind of like what you said about Phantom, right? Like one of the probably the really good selling features is the thing that's really holding the DEXs back is this whole gas fee issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're, that politician down in the U.S. Congress, the senator from the great state of Washington, right? What's her name? Elizabeth Warren.
Mm-hmm.
And she's always going on about, hey, I wanted to buy $100 worth of this cryptocurrency and it cost me $500 in gas fees. That doesn't make any sense.
That's what blew my mind with a lot of those like NFTs and things. Those people, the gas fees on those were absurd. What people were paying.
And even Mr. Vitalik himself even came out and said, hey, you're screwing up my supercomputer.
Yeah.
Because the higher ETH's price goes, the higher that gas fee. If anything, it would be better that Ethereum's price actually be really, really low. But of course, all the crypto kids who want to get rich buying crypto, they don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
So there is a bit of a fundamental flaw with this whole thing. And unfortunately, I think this is actually a big function of that 4-year cycle. And actually, I even put this on here. You can, we were, before we got the video going, to try and help people see that cycle in the markets. Although I don't know whether I've done this correctly. But here you can see there's a previous cycle peak and there's a cycle peak. So theoretically, we should be able to go like peak to peak. Where are we here? Something like that. Right, so there to there, and you can see the next peak should come in. And it really should come in the end of 2025. I don't think I have this quite accurate, but probably isn't the best chart to show you because there's a nice cycle prior to this as well. So, the issue here is that at these levels, you ever heard me talk about what's value in Bitcoin? And actually, I'd be curious, like, what do you think is actually value? How do you figure out what value is in Bitcoin? Most people I'd say 99% of the public do not understand this. So I'd be curious, like, do you understand? How do you actually figure out what the heck value is in Bitcoin?
I mean, it's what people are willing to pay for it.
No, that's not value.
No, that's the intrinsic.
No.
No.
That's actually what they call quantitative analysis, or what's based on sentiment.
Okay.
So, that's like the greater fool's theory.
Okay.
You buy something with the idea that there's a greater fool out there that's willing to buy it off of you at a higher price.
Mm-hmm.
So that's absolutely not value. So try and erase that from your thinking.
Gone.
That's the anti-value. And sadly, that's exactly what all these silly
people at the top. They're chasing.
So how do you define value in Bitcoin? Three letters. First letter starts with a C.
C. 3 letters.
Let's poll our audience. I definitely know Adam.
Adam will know it. C.
But let's see if Hex knows, or Crypto Granny. Crypto Granny, eh? Crypto Granny. Nice to meet you, Crypto Granny. I don't think we've talked to you before. Any ideas? How on earth do you figure out what the hell value
Cost?
is?
That's 4 letters. Oh, cost
Well,
of
that's the first word. Remember we said there's 3 words, right?
Adam, cost of production. Top.
So he just helped you. There's your answer.
Yeah.
You have any idea what he's talking about?
I'm here to learn, Brian.
So, do we want to spend 10 minutes going down this rabbit hole, or do we just want to keep moving forward here?
What do you feel is the best use of our time?
Well, it's important, for the record, that your audience does understand this.
Let's hear it.
And as I said, I could name names, I could show you pictures, I could show you YouTube. I mean, none of these people understand this, and it drives you crazy. This goes all the way up into like government bureaucrats and stuff. They just don't understand this. So, what makes Bitcoin actually valuable? There's got to be something about Bitcoin where you go, you know what? That actually is a good idea. And hint, it has something directly to do with the fact that the people that define what money is in our society do basically the exact opposite. So why would people put value on gold? Any ideas?
Because it had a scarcity.
Ah, very good.
Oh, because
excellent. So
yeah.
there's probably not that much around, eh?
No, and that's what. Same with Bitcoin. You got the 21 million.
Excellent. So we definitely know that there is a fixed supply, and one might argue that the listing of ETFs and stuff like that is actually going to undermine that fixed supply concept. But nonetheless, so what is it about Bitcoin that actually makes it valuable?
That the cost to mine one Bitcoin doubles every 4 years.
All right. So what makes Bitcoin valuable?
The cost of production.
No.
No.
I mean, that is how we figure out what the value is, but what would actually make Bitcoin valuable?
Is it the proof of work?
Well, you're close. How about this idea? I mean, let's maybe back up a minute.
Yeah.
How 100 years ago, 200 years ago, if you were living on the prairie, you ever see the show Little House on the Prairie with Laura Ingalls Wilder and that when you were a kid?
Yep. Yep.
And the Oregon Trail, right? All those people coming on the chuck wagons and stuff, moving their way across the country, right? So how did they, like, if you're out on the prairie and you're running a little farm and stuff, and you need like a pound of sugar, you need like a big bag of flour to make
Store of value.
Right? Like how would you actually buy this stuff? Do you have any idea how that actually worked? 100, 200
Bargaining power, so you can
well, sort of. Actually, it turns out, and like I said, the Little House on the Prairie is actually a really good analogy. Because there was a family that was in the town that actually ran the general store. Do you remember that? I don't know whether that sounds at all familiar.
No.
But what would end up happening is all the people that had homesteads and stuff around the town, they would have an account at the general store. And they might have chickens on their homestead. And they might, have chickens laying eggs like crazy. And they might need a bag of sugar or a bag of flour or something. And what they would do is they would come into the general store with a big basket of eggs, or maybe some freshly slaughtered chickens or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they would go to the general store and they would say, I've got all of these eggs. Can you give me credit for the eggs at the store?
Mm-hmm.
And the general store operator would say, all right, typical price of an egg is, I don't know, a penny, 2 pennies. You've got like 10 dozen eggs, so that's 240, or 100, what did I say, 10 dozen eggs, right?
Yeah.
Roughly, whatever. That's $1, that's 120 eggs, so I'll give you credit for $1.20. Does that make sense?
So it's used for bartering.
Right? But more importantly, what is the general store operator doing? He is operating a ledger.
Okay. Yep. And it's the distributed
he
ledger
says,
of Bitcoin that everyone
Laura Ingalls Wilder on July 19th, 1823, you came in and gave me a dozen eggs or 10 dozen eggs, and you have a credit at the store for $1.20. Oh, you need a bag of flour? That's going to cost you 60 cents. All right? Let's deduct the cost of the bag of flour from your ledger entry. Mm-hmm. You now have a credit at the store of 60 cents. Does that make sense?
It does.
That's the way commerce has been done, like for literally thousands of years. Is these ledgers that people would just keep track of all around the country. And, as time went by, the ledgers would get bigger, and of course, people would put money in the banks, and then the banksters, and this is the cheeky part, is the banksters say, all this money sitting in the bank, just sitting there doing nothing, sitting in our safe, maybe we'll lend that out. Oh, yeah, you needed a new tractor. Well, you've only got, Laura Ingalls Wilder, you only got a 60-cent credit with us over at the general store, but at interest, we'll lend you $100, $200, $300, whatever the cost of a tractor is. And then the banksters, of course, make a profit on the interest that they charge on that loan. And that's now what banking has become. But historically, the ledger was actually the banking system. You with me?
Yep.
So now do you understand the value of what Bitcoin offers?
Definitely.
It is a third-party ledger that, because the data on the ledger is validated by these miners that have absolutely no interest whatsoever in what your bank balance is. All they do is they just validate the ledger. This now becomes an incredibly powerful tool of just keeping an account. Who owns what? And do you remember when we started the conversation? King Henry I, back around, I think it was about 1100, 1200, he got rid of the banksters out of the country of England. And I can't remember the exact date, it's somewhere around there. And he enacted this tally stick system, which in essence is very similar to the way that the Bitcoin ledger works. It was completely validated by outside sources. The banksters had no input whatsoever into the system, and that's the most important thing. Because we know that the banksters every 80 years go and devalue the currency, or even go and switch currencies. Like, 80 years ago, 90, 100 years ago, we all used British pounds and D-marks as our base currency. And then, 90 years ago, they just decided, you know what, now we are going to use US dollars as our hegemony asset. And of course, over the past 90 years, they've completely diluted the shit out of the US dollar. And as soon as it gets to the point where the US cannot borrow any more money against the value of this US dollar thing, then they will switch to another thing and the US dollar would become instantly worthless. Kind of like, I don't know whether you've seen what the British pound has done, but the British pound has lost a lot of its value over the past 100 years.
Yeah.
So that's why Bitcoin is so damn valuable. And you know, the person to listen to who actually really explains this well in a modern banking theory way is Michael Saylor. He gets this and he understands why Bitcoin is so incredibly valuable. But the issue there is what makes Bitcoin valuable? It is the and I don't know whether I have the terminology correct here. I sometimes use the wrong words, but I think they call it the immutable blockchain.
The immutable ledger on the blockchain.
Well said. In that the blockchain itself and the ledger transactions are bulletproof. You can't go in and fuck with them. Excuse my French.
You can get us demonetized.
It is outside miners that actually validate the data, and they compete against each other for payment of Bitcoin to validate that ledger. And it's really cool the way Satoshi created the validation system. You have to submit the ledger in a very specific way with a certain code that starts the actual reporting process. And the first person who does that, they get the reward. So it's totally open. Anybody can mine a block. Anybody. You know, and it's totally competition. But the point here is some bankster can't go in and just arbitrarily, oh, I'm going to change your balance. Like in my country, do you remember the truckers and their big dispute they had with the government? Do you remember that? Did that even make the news in Oregon? Probably not.
I didn't see anything, no. How long ago was this?
It was all through the whole sickness nonsense.
Oh. No, not really.
And there was a bunch of Canadians that had just had enough of this silly Trudeau guy. And they were just like, you know, get the hell out of our faces. And they went to the Capitol and said, look at, you know, shut up, buddy. Quit your stupid idiot. You know, because he has ties to like Klaus and, you know, the World Economic Forum and all that crap. And they're all part of this great reset, Rothschilds, 1%, world elite, that they go and do these great resets every 8 years and fuck over the public. In fact, inflation was actually called by Alan Greenspan, who is a very famous U.S. central banker. I don't know whether you ever heard the name Alan Greenspan?
Yep.
Does that sound familiar at all?
Yeah.
Anyway, so he said that basically inflation is just the confiscation of the nation's wealth. So in essence, I mean, anybody who really understands the way the system works understands how horribly corrupt fiat currencies are. It's horrible. Yeah. So we have an immutable blockchain that can't be screwed with by the 1%. But here's the issue. What did we say was the thing that gave the blockchain value?
The immutable ledger aspect.
Right? And how is the ledger immutable?
Because
how is it immutably immutable?
Because it's on the blockchain, you can't change the code.
Because the miners validate the network.
Yep.
Right? Decentralized.
Cotter says miners do not validate the ledger, the nodes do.
I mean, we're getting into semantics here.
Yeah.
And Cotter can debate this into the ground with me. I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible for, you know, Cotter could come on here and tell us, you know, about how all these different mining rigs and stuff work and all that. I mean, I don't want to get into that.
Yeah.
But do you understand that somebody is paid to validate think of the country general store.
Yep.
And think of that ledger, right? Who's validating the ledger? And the answer is the miners are validating the ledger that it's actually correct. And Connor's gonna be on me on this all day.
Yeah, won't let
But
he
so,
won't
do you
live it
understand where
down.
I'm getting at with this? Does this
I
make
do.
sense?
No, it does clarifies
All
it.
right. So the question there becomes then, how do you understand that when you are validating the ledger, you get paid a certain amount of money
Yeah.
to validate the ledger?
Yes.
Right? That's the whole
Reward.
Bitcoin reward
Yep.
system. And the value of that reward system is what we call the cost of production.
Yep.
So there actually has to be a certain price that, as long as Bitcoin in the open marketplace is above this certain price, then the people who validate the network, they can exchange the Bitcoins for that price in fiat currency, and they can pay their bills for validating the network. Does that make sense?
It does.
All right. I can't show you on Coinigy, but one of our longtime site members actually built a script on TradingView that actually tracks what the cost of production is given the different mining equipment that they use. And the general consensus is sort of the fastest, most efficient computer systems, graphics cards, all that kind of stuff that's used to actually crunch all the data and submit the blockchain verification. Their cost of production right now is somewhere probably around $10,000 a coin.
That's why.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's an important number to remember.
10,000.
In fact, and every 4 years, of course, that number gets chopped in half, right? So when we started out, it was like 100, from zero. What do they call it? The Genesis block, whatever. That would be a really good question to know what the actual cost of production is right out of the gate, but it was probably incredibly low.
Yeah. Cotter says another
But
area
then
he
every
would
4
agree.
years, that number doubles.
Yep.
Right? Does that make sense?
It does.
All right. So, and there you go, Connor. So, of course, he wants
I'd
to
argue that one too.
So, just the point here is that that number doubles every 4 years when we go through the Bitcoin halving. That's the whole point of halving.
Yep.
Is that cost of production number, the amount of money that miners are paid out for validating the network, it doubles. And it doubles and it doubles and it doubles and it doubles. And it will just keep doubling.
Yeah.
Now, what's supposed to happen is, you've heard of Moore's Law?
I don't think so.
Moore's Law basically says that, how do we say this?
Moore's Law?
The processing power of graphics cards and computer processing equipment should double. I think it's like once every 18 months.
Doubles at about every 2 years.
2 years. So theoretically, if everything was kept stable and level, that should offset, right? The computer processor should double its processing power, and the payout to process the data should fall by half. And from what I understand, those should basically balance out. But there's something else going on here. Does it make sense that every time the Federal Reserve Board goes and does another quantitative easing or repo, they use all these fancy words and stuff to try and confuse us? What they're really doing is they're actually reducing the actual purchasing power of each and every one of these things that we actually price this thing in. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
That's a complicated concept. That's that whole inflation thing.
Yeah.
Like when I was a kid, you used to go to the grocery. I remember going to McDonald's. You could buy a cheeseburger or a hamburger for 29 cents and a cheeseburger for 39 cents. Now,
then they had the dollar meal, the whole dollar section. They don't even have that anymore.
Oh, yeah, that's ancient history, right? So the question is, why are those prices going up? It's not because McDonald's is making a better burger.
No.
The burger is basically exactly the same. it's the purchasing power of the currency that you're using to buy the burger that it's getting less and less and less as they print more and more and more of these dollars.
Yep.
And each dollar itself becomes incrementally less valuable. So,
yeah.
Together, the fact that we have this blockchain ledger that's immutable and it is not subject to some, politician or some bankster who wants to cook the books to line their pockets, they can't just go and F around with this. And that's half of the reason why I think Bitcoin has done as well as it has. But the problem here is that this is like $3,000 or $4,000 right here, and this is $60,000 here. Remember what I told you? Do you remember what I said to you? Was what's the natural growth rate for anything really in this world? It's 1 unit of price for 1 unit of time. And how would you measure a natural growth rate like that? The answer is 45-degree angle.
Yeah.
So, there's your 45-degree angle. If I apply that over here, the problem with this and charting the way that we do here is that this scale is not 1-to-1. Right? It might be interesting. I don't know whether we can do scales on here, but it might be interesting to actually see what the actual scale of this chart is. But my hunch is it's not 1-to-1.
Yeah.
So the point being that 45-degree angle is probably something like that if this is 1-to-1. If I go 1-to-1 here, this chart just goes right off the screen. You don't even see it.
Yeah.
So anyway, the point being that this is 3,000. And in like a year or 2 years' time, a year and a half, it went from 3,000 to 60,000. Remember, we said that right now the cost of production is somewhere around $10,000. I've seen some Bitcoin mining companies that publicly state that their cost of production is around $6,000 or $7,000 US dollars. I don't know whether I necessarily agree with that as like their all-in cost. Cotter here, of course, he will.
He says cost of production bottoms 15,000.
Yeah, he might, and he believes that the cost of production is quite a bit higher. And as you can see, I don't believe that one effing bit.
Yeah.
But hey, these are publicly traded companies, and they have to report. And that's what they report. And if they get caught lying, they can get into a lot of trouble for basically lying to shareholders. But the purpose of the show tonight is not to sit and debate cost of production with Cotter. We could do that all day long. What I would just simply say is the point here is that at $60,000, even if we use Cotter's number, is $60,000 the same as $15,000? I mean, come on. No. So this is the problem with commodities, is that this is an open marketplace. So if the public, kind of remember how you said earlier, well, the cost of or the value on Bitcoin is, well, everybody wants to buy it. Well, no, that's not value. That's sentiment.
Yeah.
And you know what really sucks is, when we get into these insane blow-off tops here, I mean, the FOMO. Have you ever heard that expression? FOMO?
Oh, yeah. I always think it's funny that everyone's in line there's a meme that's like Bitcoin at $65,000 and it's just a line out the door of, it's like 2 carts. $65,000 on one side, and then when it's $20,000, there's just like no one there.
Yeah,
like, I'm there for that.
Unfortunately, that's actually the hallmark of commodities markets.
Yeah.
So this is what they're supposed to do, and you, as a shrewd investor, you have to be patient and disciplined and not get sucked into this euphoria up top here. So isn't that interesting? So Forrest says I do have a major echo. Right. If I sit here, Forrest, is that any better? We did a sound check to start off the video, and Adam gave me a thumbs up. But man, you guys are saying my audio sounds like shit. Anyway, it's an ongoing thing. I don't think we'll ever solve it. Well, Joshua says, yeah, there's an echo. So, yeah, we got another problem here.
All right, is that better now?
I've got Video Ninja muted. So,
Yeah.
Oh, now somebody
Fixed.
says
Cool.
it's been fixed.
Turned off one of the other ones. We're good.
Okay. Oh, there you go. All right.
Yeah, see, I've done this enough.
Okay, so the point of the matter here is based on our conversation, and let's just keep this really simple. Price of Bitcoin right now is $30,000 in the open marketplace. Is that value?
Sorry, I was reading the comments. They're saying it's all better now.
Again,
Repeat your question, please.
so Bitcoin's trading at $30,000 in the open marketplace.
Uh-huh.
And let's be generous and let's use Cotter's cost of production. I don't necessarily agree with that, but let's use his number. Is this trading at value?
No.
That's half of the battle with investing in assets is trying to figure out what the hell value is.
Yeah.
And not getting sucked into the euphoria. So it's awfully tough for me to make the argument right now that Bitcoin is cheap. I would actually say it's not cheap. Bitcoin cheap is when it's trading at or below the cost of production. So just understand that.
Okay, that makes sense.
Not cheap right now, but just because it's not cheap, that doesn't necessarily mean it can't go up. But the problem is I don't know whether you've known me long enough or not, but is Brian a bit of a cheap ass?
Brian likes his money.
Yeah, and I don't like overspending.
Yes.
Okay, somebody says, I like the audio filter, the echo fit. I have metadata averaging, haha, kisses. All right, that's what it's about.
Well,
so anyway, the point of the matter here is that I'm a cheap ass by nature. So
gotta be
I have
when
a
trading.
very difficult time justifying investing in an asset at $30,000. We can even say now it's about twice what Cotter's cost of production is. I would personally prefer to be investing in Bitcoins down around, and frankly speaking, I would personally prefer somewhere around $10,000 to $15,000. That I think is the ideal buying window for a guy like me. Now, the good part about it is what happens after this coming halving event?
hopefully Bitcoin shoots up.
No. Come on. Let's use our thinking caps
Yeah.
here. We said that the cost of production right now, and let's use Potter's generous number,
Yes.
is
So-
how much?
His number is 15.
All right. And what is going to happen to that number come the halving event?
Goes up.
By how much?
Double.
So what will
Yeah,
be the
so
new
13.
cost of
Or sorry, 30.
Yeah. So this is the really powerful thing about Bitcoin is that every 4 years, by definition, that value number doubles. That's what makes
Yeah.
Bitcoin so incredibly
It's
powerful.
the value number.
And did we say, is there any value in this world of having a ledger that the banksters cannot fuck with?
No, that's most valuable.
Is there any value to that?
That a bank can't fuck with it? Yes.
So, is there some value to this thing called Bitcoin?
Indeed.
And we know what that value number is, right?
Yes.
Because if the number goes below that cost of production, what ends up happening? The miners that are validating the network, they're like, well, there's no point in us doing this anymore. We're losing money.
Yeah.
So as long as you have the Michael Saylors out there who
He's
are
always buying
pitching this
Bitcoin.
idea, then by definition, they're not going to let the price go below that. And actually, there's a lot of people that have invested a lot of money in this Bitcoin idea. I mean, to the point probably of trillions of dollars. It's probably gotten that big.
Yeah.
Do they want to see their investment in all the mining equipment and all the infrastructure and Cotter's chickens and stuff? That's a whole side conversation. Do they want to see that all go to pot? No. So what ends up often happening is, and actually there's a really easy thing, and the interesting thing is all the people that are in the lounge that are chattering away here, most of them already know all this stuff,
Yeah.
like Cotters and like Joshua and Adam and stuff like that. All these people, they all know this. So if anything, the people that are watching this video later on, if you needed a nice simple explanation of how this all works, then I think we just gave you a really,
Yeah.
really simple. Just think of your country store and like Little House on the Prairie, and they've got chickens and they've got eggs and stuff, but they need flour and they need sugar and stuff. And how do they with chickens and eggs? And maybe they're growing corn in the field. How do they get the flour? How do they get the sugar in sort of homesteader world? Well, that's where the country store comes in. How does the country store sort of manage it? It manages all of their clients through a ledger, and it literally was done in chalk years ago. And everybody had like a balance at the country store, and that's exactly what Bitcoin is for the 21st century.
Understandable.
So, there's one way that we can actually really easily discern whether Bitcoin is near that level where, we got a pretty good chance that we're near the bottom. And I just gave you the answer to what it is. And that is, if we get to the point where enough miners back away because they're not making any money for mining anymore because the price of Bitcoin's so low, that we open up the potential for an event. Do you know what this event is called in crypto and in Bitcoin in particular?
No.
It's called a 51% attack.
Okay, I've heard that.
So if you ever, and the simple logic there is that if we have a whole bunch of different miners and they're all competing against each other, then no one miner can sort of dominate the blockchain and actually control more than 51% of the reporting nodes, right? And as Forest Real Estate Group, brokered by EXP, says, double spend, where you get into this sort of, hey, these guys are so powerful that they can actually start manipulating the blockchain and manipulating the data on the blockchain. It's called, in simplest term, 51% attack now. So Cotter says it takes 192 to 215 X hashes to do a 51% attack now. All right. Well, regardless, if we ever start hearing about that, then it means that the Bitcoin price is too low.
Okay.
So if the Bitcoin price is too low and it opens up the potential for 51% attack, and we know all these people have invested a ton of money in this Bitcoin immutable blockchain ledger, and it's actually really valuable, what should happen next?
So it's too low. Sorry, I'm making a note. That if the 51% attack is getting talked about, that means that there probably will be some people buying it, because if that means that it's too low, and if that's what people know, that there might be more money going into it, that could drive it up.
Well, the people that have a vested interest in getting that price up. Right. So long and short of it here, where I'm going with all this is, if you fancy yourself a good value investor, if you ever hear the talk that, hey, we're getting really close to 51% attack kind of talk, then that's a value warning. We are at levels where the price cannot stay down at these levels. And interestingly enough, last November, that's exactly what we saw.
Interesting.
This was the first time through this whole cycle I had actually started to hear people talk about 51% attack talk. And what a surprise, the price has gone and basically doubled. And interestingly enough, that was in and around Cotter's magic number.
Thanks, Cotter.
Maybe he's more right than
But
And he would say, maybe.
yeah, well, that's awesome.
All right, so
Should we move on?
that's your sort of, and it's interesting because if you actually go out in the world and you ask people, you go to any like Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan, you ask any of them, how does Bitcoin actually work? What makes Bitcoin valuable? Why is it these people are interested? None of these people can answer this question.
Yeah,
They actually say exactly the same thing that you said.
yeah,
Well, you got people wanting to buy it. It's just more people wanting to buy it. Well, that's not
yeah.
what makes Bitcoin valuable. It is really as absolutely Bitcoin could give a rat's ass right now. Then this is the scary part about this, and this is why it's so important to understand this, because when we were up top here at $60,000, remember we said that cost of production. I mean, keep in mind that's only $3,000. That's like a 20x.
Yeah.
So, I thought Bitcoin's cost of production here was about 3, 4, 5,000 bucks. So that's why I say the cost of production doubled on this happening event. So I think the cost of production now is like $5,000, $10,000. Now, obviously there's inflation involved in that, and that's a function of what is the value of these things that we're actually pricing them in. The cost of energy is obviously going up. The cost of property is going up. You see the construction cost. If you wanted to build a warehouse to store all these miners, that's going up. So long and short of it here is, maybe Cotter's more right than I am with regard to that. But the point of the matter here is that cost of production was here. It doubled. That started this next bull run. But there's no way in hell you can justify fundamentally Bitcoin price at like 50,000 bucks.
Yeah.
No fucking way.
Yeah.
Because remember, cost of production, even right here, was basically $5,000-$10,000. Here's the price up at 50, 60 G's. Who's buying up here? Remember, miners who are validating the network all along here, they're getting paid these numbers.
The public's buying up there.
This is what they're getting paid. So up here, do you think they're doing pretty well?
The institutions are.
Well, the miners.
Yeah.
They're mining the network. They're getting paid Bitcoins.
Oh, yeah.
Their cost to mine, validate the network is here. So they are paying $15,000 for a Bitcoin, and the price of Bitcoin in the marketplace is 60 G's. You think they're happy?
The miners? Yeah.
Yeah.
Very.
They're making a killing.
Yeah.
Do they have any complaints?
No.
No. So the point here is, I mean, it's not as crazy as this, but even now, if we use Cotter's number, and we say that their cost of production is 15 G's at $30,000, do you think they're happy?
Not as happy as they could be, but at least they're making more.
Well, are they making money?
Yes.
That's the definition of happy.
Yes, they're making money.
Right. So let's assume where's 15,000? That's right down here.
It's at 30, almost right on the dot there.
Right. So do they have a pretty healthy profit margin?
Yeah.
Now, let's say Bitcoin here drops down to $25,000 in the next 10 seconds.
And they're not.
Boom! It just drops like $7,000 instantly.
Yeah.
Boom.
Then
Are they in trouble?
not in trouble, but
Are they still making money?
yes. As of right now, yes.
So do they really care?
No.
Does Bitcoin care?
Nope.
And that's the most important thing you all have to learn from what I just went through there. Is that as long as the Bitcoin price is above whatever their cost of production number is, Bitcoin doesn't care, and the miners don't really care.
That's a very good point.
That's why this is so dangerous here.
Yeah, I've never considered the cost of production there.
Insanely dangerous up here.
Yeah.
And this is what commodities do. I mean, you look at any commodity. Did you see what the price of lumber did?
Oh, it was
that crazy
disgusting. Yeah, it was through the roof right there.
Yeah, but that's just what commodities do. How about natural gas? Did you see what the price of natural gas did when that idiot went and murdered a whole bunch of people in Eastern Europe just
Yep.
because what the hell? It seemed like a fun thing to do.
Yep. Through
And
the
the price
roof.
of natural gas went absolutely insane. But that's what commodities do. And so, interestingly enough, Bitcoin's just acting like a perfectly natural commodity. There's nothing new going on.
Craziest was that people were saying when it was hitting like 60, 70,000, like hitting up 150 soon. I'm like, no,
Well, and that's the problem, right? And, the good part about Bitcoin, like I
it had to
said,
come
is
down.
you should be, let's just do some simple math. You should be able to tell me the year at which Bitcoin, by definition, will actually be worth $150,000. So let's do some math. If we and we'll use, why don't we use Cotter's 15,000
Okay.
reference? So we said that the cost of production basically doubles every 4 years, right?
Yeah.
So you want to get a calculator out, and we know that the cost of production is $15,000 today.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily agree with that, but no sense in getting into an argument with Cotter here in the middle of our Coinigy show here. So let's use 15,000, and we know that in what a little less than a year, I guess about 3/4 of a year,
Yeah. So
that is going
30,
to go to what?
30.
All right. So
So
that means in 4 years,
after,
well, it's going to be the next
so
year,
in
but
5 years,
every 4
basically.
years, this darn thing doubles, right?
Yeah.
So in 4 years, the
It'll be up to 60 after
cost
4 years
production
after
will
that.
be double this,
Yes.
15. So that or 30.
Yeah.
So then that means that
I think it's April,
in
May.
where are we here? Here's 30,000, right?
Yeah.
So 4 years after that, the next happening event, right?
So,
Actually, or why don't we put it right? Because it's like
yeah.
April.
Yeah.
Year.
April of 24.
Okay.
And
it's
then,
interesting because a lot of these charting sites actually they don't even let you do this. But let's see how far Coinigy.
so
That's the one good thing about Coinigy is we can look out into the future quite a bit.
yeah.
So kudos to Coinigy for that.
So
There are
then,
other charting sites that they don't let you do this.
so
So
then
we
4
said the
years
next
out would be
happening will
28,
be what? Probably somewhere around 28,
and
right?
that would be at 60.
All right. So we're working our way up, right? Climbing the wall of worry. And the good part about it, right, is that this is just based purely on mathematics. It's not anything to do with sentiment, right? It's this whole cost of production concept.
And then
4 years after that.
32 would be up to 120.
All right. So now we're getting pretty damn close. You can pretty much almost tell me exactly when this thing's going to be worth 150,000, right?
Yeah.
So, that's the logic is that even the poor people, and this is why, by definition, Bitcoin is a quote unquote rise only market. So I might argue that there is your rise only market metric. The irony of it all, though, is that probably price is going to do something like this. So you see the relative distance from this high to this high. So we're probably going to do something similar. So we go up like that, and then we come down like that, and then we go like that. Right? It's exactly what we're just doing right now, right?
Yeah.
And then when we get up into here, where the value of Bitcoin is 150,000, and you know what? You ever heard of a guy named Tom? What the hell's his name? I want to say Tom Lee. Does that sound right? Oh, you Cotter, you probably know what this is. Anyway, he works at a company called Fundstrat. And his target for Bitcoin, I mean, we got to take this thing through the roof, but it makes sense, right? If we just, ironically enough, you could probably just simply play connect the dots, right? There's 20,000, there's 60. Oh, look at that. Hey, Brian's getting pretty good at his drawing. Eh?
Yeah, I'd say.
So, something along these lines. That means that the next cycle, for whatever it's worth, I think his name's Tom Lee.
I looked at Tom Lee at Fundstrat.
Yeah.
Yeah, managing
his
partner and head of
price
research.
objective on a Bitcoin is $500,000. So the point here is that this sort of growth, I don't know whether I necessarily agree with that. But if we just sort of stair step our way up here, can you see how this sort of grows over time? And probably what ends up happening is we go like that, and then like that. We come back to the cost of production, then we go up, and then maybe the next wave is where we hit that 500,000. I don't know. The only problem here, though, is that this is just based purely on cost of production metric. And unfortunately, we're going through this great reset. What does that mean? That means that they're screwing around with these things over here while we're going through this. And what we actually might find is that, there's a whole bunch of guys on the site that love celestial studies. And according to the celestial studies, the world is supposed to just crap its pants through this window here. So we it might be another one of these manufactured sicknesses. It might be a global thermonuclear war. It might, hell, what a surprise. All of a sudden, the people in charge are now actually openly talking about UFOs and extraterrestrials. Maybe that's it. Who knows? But
we'll see in
we're
5 years.
for some really, really big changes in our society here on planet Earth.
Josh says $50 loaf of bread world.
Well, and that's what I always joke with the gang, right? Is that, I mean, I started out, of course, this adventure. My funny little tweet, right? I bought first Bitcoin at like $460, and you guys were all writing, yeah, we had 10,000 Bitcoin, 100,000 Bitcoin. Well, I'm like, Bitcoin doesn't exist in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. So you might want $10,000 Bitcoin. You might want $100,000, $1 million Bitcoin. But that means everything else in our society is going to go up commensurately as well. And, just even in the time that I've been doing this, when I first sort of got involved in this space, a loaf of bread at my grocery store was about $1 or so. That was pretty normal for a very long period of time. And now a half decent loaf of bread at my grocery store is about $3 or $4. And I wouldn't be surprised, if we do happen to go up to like Fun Strats kind of moonshots here, the price of loaf of bread is going to work its way up to, 40, 50, $100. Weimar, Germany. You ever heard of Weimar, Germany, right?
No.
All right, that was the government that was in power following World War I in Germany. And Germany was put under an absolutely horrific war reparations repayment
plan. Yeah, I remember that now.
That they had to pay the French and the British and everybody else money for causing the war, which really wasn't fair to Germany.
Yeah.
And it caused the German currency to basically collapse. And it got to a point where it literally took a wheelbarrow of currency, German currency, to buy a loaf of bread. I mean, it was that bad. Yeah. And remember I had said earlier that Mr. Greenspan, he had said that inflation is nothing more than just the confiscation of wealth. Can you imagine if you had worked your whole life and, even now, let's say you saved $1 million, $2 million, right? And you're like, all right, I can retire pretty good. That'll buy me a pretty good retirement. And then all of a sudden you wake up one day and you go to the grocery store and a loaf of bread is $10,000 for a loaf of bread. You're going to go through that $1 million pretty quick. Right?
I'd say.
So that's the criminality of the fiat currency system. And it's the major reason why we want to participate in Bitcoin, because theoretically, with a fixed supply and the cost of production the way that it is, Bitcoin should be able to hold on to its value. It's not so much that Bitcoin's worth $30,000 a coin, when just a few years ago it was worth $3,000 a coin. It's more like the US dollar literally has 1/10 the purchasing power of what it had even 5-10 years ago. Okay, I've wasted a lot of time here tonight. I'm really sorry, everybody.
Well, we'll jump back in, but I appreciate that insight there.
Yeah. So
Okay.
let's get on to the names that people asked us to look at.
Yeah.
Of course,
So
you
let's
know,
start
like
with
I
Hex.
love, this is absolutely perfect. This is, I don't know whether you've seen any of the Benner cycle studies that we've
Yeah, we've
done
talked
at
about that.
TRI.
Yeah, we've looked at that a couple times here.
Right. So the interesting thing is, and actually people have even copied, like this guy here,
Stealing
wealthmanagementcanada.com, even a
Josh's thunder.
Canadian. Of all things, a freaking Canadian. Canadians are supposed to have ethics.
Oh,
This guy doesn't make any reference to the fact that this actually is not Mr. Benner's work.
this is
This was
Josh's.
Mr. Benner never did this study out to 2053. He lived like 200 years ago. This is the study projected out into the future by a TRIer that actually did a really cool blog post. Right here we are, number 2
Yeah.
of the Benner cycle. So these guys went and copied our work. This is Josh's work. He updated this out into 2053, and those jerks didn't even give Josh any credit.
It's funny, they just
And now
cropped
for
the
some
picture.
reason they're the number 1 search result. How the hell does that work?
They just cropped the picture too.
Yeah, I mean, so anyway, the point being that the reason why I'm mentioning this, I mean, it pisses me off because Josh should get credit for this. He put a lot of time and effort into updating this, and nobody. That's the evil part of these stupid humans. That I really, it makes me so awful. I dislike this species. I'm a weirdo, Joe. I mean, how much money are you paying me for this education tonight?
Love.
Do you think a
Appreciation.
lot? Do you think like if you went to American business school, they would say what you're doing, Brian, is good business? I mean, I'm not getting paid a dime for this,
No.
right? And yet I'm trying to explain the whole like reasoning behind Bitcoin and crypto and shit, right?
Yes.
Anyway, point here, 2023. This is a bottoming cycle year, and actually, interestingly enough, Mr. Benner, right? He has like A, B, C, D at the bottom. What should we be doing? Years of hard times. So has it been kind of hard times in our society with all this inflation crap?
I'd say.
Low prices, relatively speaking, we could get into the whole fugazi of money. I actually think the stock market is stunningly cheap right now. But the problem is that they've manipulated the currency, so you can't see that. But the point here is good time to buy stocks and corner lots. What's a corner lot? Do you know what a corner lot reference is to?
Is that real estate?
Yeah. So like really good property that you've always wanted.
Yeah.
Right? So, and then you want to hold on to it into the boom years. And the boom year, of course, is A, right? These are like panics, peaks. Remember 1929, right? Stock market, 2000 dot-com bubble, right? Remember Bitcoin? And actually the whole damn stock market all peaked there heading into the sickness market and all that, right? So point here is that we're actually at a major pivot low here. So we should be accumulating. That's the whole point of this conversation. So I come back to your story, and remember, Brian's a cheap ass. Think Brian's going to be interested in a name that looks like that?
Yeah.
Now, the good part about it for you is that, this is one of the names that fundamentally you said that you liked. So I think we should create some sort of portfolio on Coinigy, and that's going to be your homework for this coming week, right? And what we're going to do is, number one, I like the idea of you just going and getting maybe like $100 worth of this thing right now. So you've got some skin in the game, and you can kind of just see how price acts. Now, you notice when it W'd here, right here, that was at 25 cents. And do you see how it worked its way up into 50 cent area?
Yep.
So at this point, I would have liked to have heard that you sold half on the double, and you now have a risk-free investment. No risk whatsoever.
Yep. And then,
makes sense?
Yeah, it does. So I'll do that. So there's another one.
Can you see that the market is trying to put in another W?
Yes.
Now, there's a couple different ways we can approach this. We could say, well, Brian, I really want to learn how to time my purchase and I really want to see how this works of timing purchases. So that means that everything that I've sort of told you before, we'd like to see W's on other sides of this trend line. So right now we're going to have to be patient. We're probably going to bob and weave all around here. We're going to want to get a break above that trend line, and then we're going to want to get a double, something like that, right?
There's another one that I wanted you to look at I'm pretty sure it was the SUI, and I think it was similar look of this kind.
Okay, so if you can add this to your reference sheet, that Brian is saying, nanny nibbles. If you're really, really low risk, less than 5% of your portfolio, I don't really have a problem with you coming and accumulating some of this. But what we have to wait for is this kind of event here, and it might take a while for that to happen.
Yeah.
If you want to try and time your purchase, then I think what we have to do is we have to wait for the trend line to be broken, then the W on the other side of the trend line, and then we'll pull the trigger. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
So if you could, I'm gonna give you this chart. I'll put it in
our Discord.
In the Discord, just you and I.
Yeah.
Add that to. We'll add this to. Let's create like a little mini portfolio for Joe. And let's add this chart. Maybe do like a spreadsheet or something. And then also too, we should do a side by side. Well, Brian says that we're down at the bottom end of the range, so a nanny nibble here just to get the position on. It's not a terrible idea, but let's see if we can try and time our purchase, and let's see if we can, really be a demonstrator of, hey, that's a really good trade. That make sense?
Yep.
Okay, so that's the first one, and I'm going to call this. You had an absolutely incredible buying window there at the end of the year. You should have gotten your double off, and actually this was 2023. This is a very normal seasonal trade, very normal. The only problem is, of course, is that that's a while. You could come back in what we call reload, and guys on the site, actually, we can draw a fib from this high down to this low.
It's the BFF.
What do we say 78.6 is?
The BFF.
Right. I sometimes call it the line in the sand as well, but Brian's favorite fib. And if that 78.6 happens to line off the original W, you see how working a bid down in here would have given you a really cool little fill here.
Yeah.
And you'd be in the store. There's idea number one, and I like that idea.
Okay.
I might even consider picking up a bit of this so I can just be in the trade with you, because I like that. That right there looks to me like a 2023 accumulation year name. I want to be buying when they're what? Remember how that goes? Buying when they're
low? I don't know. We've got some.
Remember, we want to be selling when they're.
Oh. I know.
Think of emotions here.
Yes.
So when everybody out there is like, "Oh, Bitcoin," what do they do?
Selling.
Yelling.
Oh yeah, selling when they're selling when they're yelling.
Right.
Buying
that's
when
all
they're
this
crying.
kind of shit. We're all gonna get rich in crypto, but you actually should be selling into that rally.
Yep.
And then now that the price is right down at the bottom end of the range, what do you think they're doing?
Panicking.
Crying, maybe?
Crying. Yeah.
They're buying when they're
crying.
All right, so that's a perfect 2000.
Selling when they're yelling, buying when they're crying.
Maybe write that down. All right. Okay, so that's number one. Now you want me to look at the SUI, you said?
Yeah. This was one that SUI.
What are we
USDT, maybe? I don't know. This was.
And where do you want to look at this?
Oh, let's try Binance, maybe.
Binance, us people in North America,
USDT.
we're about to be officially excommunicated.
Yeah, I saw that. You
Binance.
guys about to get the boot.
So neither you or I are allowed to be on Binance anymore.
Yeah.
We can look at it on Binance. I don't know. Is a lot of the Coinigy customer base Are they American or are they overseas?
Majority of we've got like 60% in the US and then
Well, we should
40%.
probably try and figure out. And this is something that I have to go through because, of course, I've been excommunicated from Binance.
Yeah.
We got to try and figure out what centralized exchange can we use in the near term that actually is acceptable. And I know Adam, he's
Coinbase.
in California, and I think he likes to use Coinbase for a lot of his stuff.
Yeah. So I would do the GDAX maybe.
DAX, all right,
Yeah.
so Coinbase
To
Pro.
USD.
And all right, there it is, USD. All right, let's see what we
See,
got.
it's a newer coin, so there's not gonna be much to yeah.
Yeah, so if this is the case, then we'll use GDAX to execute our orders, but we can't
Yeah.
do our analysis.
Yeah.
Let's head on over to Binance. We'll do our analysis here, maybe if there's enough data, but we might have to look a few.
Yeah.
So this thing's come right off. Question is, where can we actually find this thing that's got some trade history? This was one of your fundamental names, right?
Yeah, it was one that so they aims to solve some of the main challenges facing Web3 developers, including bottlenecks in transaction processing, high gas fees, and the capability to work with larger on-chain data loads. So it's basically
Okay.
supports a wide range of Web3 dApps and projects and NFTs to help with the gas fees. And it was founded by former tech leads at Meta, and then they just raised a bunch of money at 300 million at a $2 billion valuation in a Series B.
Yeah, but what was the price? That's the most
Yeah,
important thing about that. So can you figure out what did you just say there?
they secured 300 million at a $2 billion valuation
They secured $300 million in financing.
at a $2 billion valuation for a Series B.
Yeah, but I don't
Yeah.
really know what that means.
Yeah.
So they secured 300 million in financing. The question ultimately is what price on these SUI
Yeah.
things did they do the financing at? That's what we have to figure out.
Yeah.
Because you can make the argument that when these financings happen, that's your value.
Okay.
Kind of like remember we said with Bitcoin mining the network. That's where the smart money, the miners, actually, that's where they get their money. So that's what value is. So the question here is, who is the one who did the financing? And I don't know what exchange we have to
Yeah.
use here. I'm getting the impression that this is a relatively new idea.
Yeah.
So they're just using that much data anyway.
Gotcha.
And
And
you know,
then
if somebody, any of you YouTubers, let's see, what are they talking about?
said old high was
Josh is
$1.40.
couch surfing. Josh says Lincoln Lounge. All right, so I guess on the site. Where are we here? Where's the lounge? There you go. Josh was so smart. Hey, so if we look on CoinGecko, I was kind of hoping that we could do this all on
Yeah.
Coinigy, nonetheless.
We pull it in once the exchanges pick it up.
There you go. That's interesting.
Well, that's 24-hour there.
Yeah, so let's zoom out as much as we can on this thing. That pretty much
Yeah,
is, I
so it
think,
is
where
new.
they started this thing off, eh? Is that May? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
All
May.
right. So it is just
So
new.
not a hell of a lot of data to work with. That's a little bit bothersome.
Okay.
Um,
How
if
much
anything, I
data
would
do you
almost-
prefer
you,
to?
you want to see a bottom come in before you start calling bottoms, right? So how do we see a bottom come in? One thing that I do like about this chart right here is this is what's called an inside bar. That is a bit of a buy signal right there. Inside bar, we also, market came down and tested these lows, probably should come down to a daily chart. That was the inside bar level on the weekly price chart. So you can see there's a bit of a W down in here. There's also another bit of a W off of
Yeah,
these
I've looked
levels.
at the daily chart when I was looking.
Yeah.
But
So the very first thing that I would absolutely say here is it's a little bit lack of data here to give us the ability to make a really solid sort of technical impression. If we just use really simple trend line analysis, 1, 2, 3, looks like this trend line's pretty valid here. We've broken out, and now ideally we'd like to see a nice W on the other side of this trend line. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I suppose if you're really pushed, that's a W. This is, if anything, what I tell people is ideally we'd like the W's to look really well defined.
Yeah.
Right? Really nice double bottom, nice clean breakout. We know that there's a floor there. When we have a W that looks like this, down, up, down, up, yeah. If anything, I think what this is telling me is this looks almost like a to B. And
C to D.
C to D, that's right. So, yeah, we could work our way back up to that weekly inside bar level, and maybe that's what that rally was. But not like grade
Not
3
enough.
English teacher. She doesn't like this W.
Yeah.
Like she would, if you said, Joe, head up to the chalkboard and draw me the letter W, I don't think she'd be too impressed with that W.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So we would ideally, notice how they came down here, then up here, then here. That's pretty solid, right? That looks good. The only problem with that, though, is if we change this to a line chart, all of a sudden, poof, hey, where did that W go? So I still think this thing's trying to find a bottom.
Fair enough.
And the only way that I'm really going to be able to, because we can't use previous price action, like, have you ever heard me say the expression "look left"?
Yep.
So we can't look left, right? There is no price
there isn't
action
enough there.
other than this like sort of panic. Oh, okay. Remember that this one, right? This chart we were just looking at.
Oh, FTM.
I think that's FTM. Maybe that's another one.
No, that was.
Where are you? That's there it is. That's this FTM. Oh, and darn. Well, I guess to a certain degree. Notice how the market's pulling back here against these lows, so I can look left and I can kind of see, well, looks like the market found some sort of floor here and we're just coming back against that. Then if I start seeing W's, then that's telling me that, hey, that's a pretty solid floor.
Gotcha.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think that FTM had really great data going back to the previous cycle.
It did.
Where we kind of are now.
It did.
So with that said, we don't have any data to work with here to do that look left kind of thinking. So what that means is for us to really know that this is actually bottomed out, we actually have to see this thing close above this level here, right? To actually make this big honking W. So and unfortunately you're like, well, I love the 70 cents, but I don't want to pay 85. That's expensive. Well, sometimes it's actually in your best interest just to let this thing actually confirm that W before you actually start calling bottoms.
Understandable.
Now, if you fancy yourself like a trader kind of guy, all right, well, I don't really have a problem if you want to come in. And hell, even I don't really have a problem if you want to come in and buy this level here, and you're going to risk to a break of this floor here, especially that hammer low right there. It looks to me like this market likes this trend line, and somebody really wants to come in and defend this thing anytime we get down against these lows here.
Yeah.
So because of that, if you were like, well, Brian, it has W'd out here, I want to go and pick some up. If you're telling me I'm more than happy to walk away if this thing breaks through these lows, then okay. I mean, I'm okay with that. You're buying a down market. You're buying, Brian's a cheap ass. You're buying cheap. What I'd really like to know, and this will be your assignment for this week, please write this down, is you have to figure out what was this $3 million financing done at? What was the price per unit that it was done at? If we are below that number now, then I'm totally cool with it. Joshua says old high is $1.40. I guess that's what that is over there, Joshua.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering what that financing was done at, because
Yeah.
that's probably where value is right now. And you can kind of see on this chart, right? Do we get the W? And you can kind of see here before, right? So the market was coming down. We rallied off of the lows. We went down, tested the lows, trying to hold. Can we turn back up through these highs? And no. In comes a new M. See that new M
Yeah.
right there? And down we go. Boosh, boosh, boosh.
Yeah. All right. So I
So
see
then
it.
we put in a low, we rally away from it, we come down, test the low. Oh, we made new lows. Oh, it's still a bit. We rallied away, a little bit of a W, not really much. That would be sort of like what I'm talking about, like little trader. I'm a sharpshooter guy. I'm going to come in and I'm going to buy this little W down in here. But I'll tell you, if we lose these lows, like that low right there, whatever that is there, 63 cents, look out below. This thing
Yeah.
could easily be a new M, and down we go and make new lows.
Yeah. All right. So I see an article here. It was from September 9th of last year. Former Meta exec. So it's September 9th. So that's well before any of this data is there.
Yeah, so this was still a twinkle in somebody's
Yeah.
eye.
Former Meta execs raised 300 million to accelerate adoption of SUI blockchain, but the investors include FTX Ventures, Coinbase Ventures, Jump Crypto, A16Z, Circle Ventures, among others. So, yeah.
I wonder how FTX is doing right now.
Yeah. So then the collapse of FTX came about 2 months later.
So this one here is a really good analogy that we are just going to be patient.
Yep.
I think you're too early to declare a bottom. And if anything, I think it's in your best interest just to let this thing settle
play
down.
out.
And have you ever heard me talk a bit about saucer bottoms?
Yeah.
So saucer bottoms usually look something
Actually,
like
no,
that.
not. Now you draw it.
I like them to form over like a good 6-month window. We did have a panic low here. If we actually made a panic low, down into here, then rallied back up, tested this high, then came back down, traded down and tested this low, and this low held, and then we turned up. What does that kind of look like?
W.
Yeah, definitely W. Actually, I'm thinking more like an actual specific chart pattern that technicians love. How about a head and
shoulders? Yep. Yeah.
So, in a weird sort of way,
Inverse
a really
head and
good saucer bottom will often look like this head and shoulders type pattern.
Okay.
And the key here is that we would actually expect to see a new low here put in, and probably, September, October is usually a pretty tough time on crypto. And then if this really is a bottom, then what we would see is, like I said, some sort of low that's put in here, saucer bottom. We take out this low, piss everybody off. Then we come down, and actually this is the point right here that you want to like laser beam focus, where what really we want to see is some sort of W right through that window. So September, October, November, that's usually a really good time to be a buyer of these kind of assets. So let's just be patient. I don't think there's any hurry here yet whatsoever. Now, this could all be thrown out the window if we happen to go and put in a nice W here now.
Mm-hmm.
I doubt it, but
we'll keep an eye on it.
So if we did something like that,
then we would.
Then I would start. Remember, I said we want to see a close up through here. So if we actually get something like that, then that would mean that the head and shoulders is off the table. And at that point, if we do get all this, then we can actually start drawing this as a trend line, something along those lines. And we'll start, let's say this is the rally peak. We'll start doing reload zones back down, and notice that the reload zone is going to be nothing more than just a test of this level down the road. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So let's see what happens. We're pretty
Yeah.
early on this story.
So
That's the number one thing I'd say. And then of course, two, if this thing does pop up, do you think those FTX kind of guys, do you think they're going to want to get some money out of this thing to maybe make the court a little happier?
yeah.
I think we all know the answer to that.
Yes.
So we definitely have some motivated sellers
Yeah.
floating out there, right?
Yeah.
So
And
let's
well,
put that in the spreadsheet. You know, your homework for next week is we have the beginnings of a technical sort of roadmap
cool.
for us.
And we'll get to those ones that we got online.
Yeah, sure.
But then the other two, they're known. Avalanche and Polygon or Matic were the other two that I had on there. But then we can jump
Why don't
in.
we do those next week?
Yeah, we'll do those
Or,
next
you
week.
know,
And
maybe we meet once every 2 weeks. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not that big of a deal. But why don't we'll wait for next week and
we'll
let's spend, you know, maybe we'll do another half hour here or so.
yeah. So
And,
let's jump into
let's,
Hex.
see if we can hit some of the names that
Yeah.
people.
We had 2 requests for Hex, and I know Hex Love was out there. So I hope you're still with us, Hex Love.
I think I remember talking to you guys about Hex. They had a big fundamental event, right?
So
And they ran the name up into the fundamental event, and then it just puked out.
Tweet at them and tell them. Starting now.
Kind of like what you. Looks like we've looked at this a few times.
Oh yes, we have.
I
Then
think you can see there is sort of the original W, and also too. You see the seasonal trade. Do you remember how this expression goes? Buy when it's something.
What is it?
Sell when it's something.
Buy when it snows, sell when it goes.
So, does it ever snow in Oregon these days?
Well, not much, but it rains.
Right.
It snows up in the mountains. I could drive an hour and a half to go skiing.
Ski hill there, right?
Yeah, we go up to Mount Hood, and we're good.
So do you see November, December, January? I mean, it's so bloody cliche how this stuff works. They ran the name up, and there was a big, if I'm not mistaken, I think that they had like a lockup or something that finally expired.
Okay.
Remember that?
For Hex?
Yeah, is Mr. Hex here? Mr. Hexel.
I just tweeted at them, letting them know that we were talking.
Yeah. So the point of the matter here is that this was a pretty typical sort of pump, buy the rumor, sell the news kind of idea.
Yeah.
So the lockup, the coins, whatever it was, were issued, and then literally like within minutes of that event, the thing started to melt back down.
Yeah.
So not really a big surprise what's happened here.
So
I'd also say too, Richard is a bit of a character. You know, if you ask Richard, all the other cryptocurrencies suck, and his cryptocurrency is the only cryptocurrency you should own. So he doesn't really play nice with the rest of the kids in the playground. So, hey, there's Mr. Hex. So, Mr. Hex, if you want to tell everybody else watching, and we got 4. Is that right? 4? Rolex Richard, is that what they call him? Anyway, you know, it's a funny anecdote. I remember when the Bitcoin market topped out there in this cycle, and the price started to break here, and the official Bitcoin bull market is over, is when Richard went on social media and he was crying. You broke my Bitcoin. You broke the bull market. He was just making money hand over fist here.
yeah.
And the irony of it all is that this is a very typical. I mean, what letter of the alphabet does that look like? Well, I'll change it to a line chart. It's pretty straightforward
That's a nice
stuff.
M.
What letter is that?
M.
Right. So now you know, Joe, that if we traded below this level, that the bull market's over, right? It's pretty straightforward.
Yep.
So anyway, I always remember that. That always made me chuckle. Richard went on social media and started crying.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's here another one. The point being that you know, if you believe in Richards, then all right, awesome. This is probably a really good example of don't probably put too much money into any one idea. because if you had come in here and bought through here and you were all like, "Whoa, I'm still stinking rich. Oh, look at me, I'm so fucking awesome," and now you're like, "Oh my god, now what do I do?"
Yeah.
So and if anything, this is also a really good analogy of venture capital. I mean, this is January, and the darn thing was like what, 2 cents,
Mm-hmm.
and here we are in March,
At
and
13,
it's 12 cents. So that's like 600% move in a period of like 3 months. Is that normal?
No.
Is that healthy?
Sell
Is that
half on the double.
sustainable? No, no, and no. And they often say what usually goes straight up
Goes straight
usually has to
down.
come straight back down. So interesting that you're asking about this now, because I think what happened here, right, is that was the bid up over, and I can't remember, was it like I think it was either like a new coin was spun off, or there was like a lockup period that expired here, and a whole bunch of people were able to sell coins that they weren't able to sell prior. But there was some big fundamental event here. And this is why it's so important to be rational investors, because you need to know what the hell the fundamental story is. What's driving this thing, right? So, point here is buy the rumor, sell the news. But I think that trade has now been washed out. And you tell me, what letter of the alphabet's coming in here now? I mean, does that look like an M?
No.
Maybe. I don't know.
Got a bottom in.
And a W, especially if we go up to like a weekly chart. Oh, see, all right. Now, interesting how the weekly chart tells a little bit of a different tone. The W disappeared, when we looked at that higher time frame chart. And then also, too, what worries me immensely is this hole on the chart. What do we call this hole?
I'd love to get filled.
Yeah, I definitely like to get filled. That's for sure. In fact, do you remember what the percentage odds are that this hole will be filled in at some point down the road?
It was
Very, very high.
Yeah. It's 70.
No, higher.
90.
Yeah, even higher than that.
99.
So I wouldn't even be surprised. It's like 91.4 or some crazy number like that.
92.
I wouldn't be surprised at some point down the road we actually do have to come down and sort of test this low in earnest.
You're right. The price gap.
But it is interesting to see on the daily chart. Like, you notice what jumped out at me was down, up, down, breakout. That's a W.
Yeah. It was 91.4 that it will be filled. I've got it in my notes here.
Good. Well, it's good. You're listening. So I don't have a problem if this was like new money coming into this space. This again is what's the fundamental reason. If anything, what we need to do is reach out to some of these characters. I mean, Richard's a pretty amicable guy, and he would probably love the opportunity to shill his story a little bit to potential investors. We should probably try and reach out to him and say, hey, you want to come on the show and pitch us a line? Why would we want to buy your story versus anything else? I don't know. So W's are working. We are a million miles away from the old highs. And interestingly enough, remember we said gaps like to be filled in about 90% of the time.
Yeah.
So it works both directions. You can see this thing's riddled with gaps. There's a gap there. There's a gap there. There's a gap here. So there's also a gap up here. I don't personally consider these gaps to be quote unquote filled unless we actually see candle bodies actually come in. Now you can say these are called wicks. They're not the actual bodies. And by the way, just out of curiosity, what do we call this part of a candle that's below the body? Any idea what we call this part here?
A tail.
Good. You are officially smarter than 90% of all YouTube social media influencers.
So it's not
and even today, I saw a guy, and it kills you on YouTube. They literally do you ever look at those YouTube shorts and like TikTok kind of crap, right?
Yep.
They're like, hey, look at
wick.
this trading strategy. Buy my newsletter, take my course, right? I mean, the fucking internet is just inundated with this stuff now. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I even heard a guy today, oh, look how smart I am. Look how much money I am. And he called this a wick. And it's just like, oh, you idiot. Come on.
Yeah.
So anyway, it drives me crazy. It's one of those sort of pet peeves kind of thing. Anyway, so the point here is, and that's I think where I had all those lines on the chart before. All of these gaps will need to be filled in at some point down the road. Now, what do we say about trend lines? Do we want to buy something that's below a trend line like this?
No, I'd want on the other side of the trend line.
Yeah. So you can even see. Now, interestingly enough, if you actually buy this thing here now at what is that? That's 1 cent. Just a rally back to trendline resistance is 3 cents. But my hunch here, and remember I talked about saucer bottoms before?
Yeah.
So my hunch is that probably this thing's going to have to look something. I mean, you can kind of see. Almost looks like there's like I'd almost call this almost like a neckline right along there. And if we think saucer bottom, then we're probably, if indeed these are the lows, we're probably thinking something along those lines. You know, if we puke out here, the easy price objective is just like connect the dots. That low, that low, that low. In fact, I would even say this tail low and this tail low. You know, I could very easily see. In fact, actually, this is actually a pretty good analogy. What do we call this pattern here, where you have this line coming down here and this line coming down here? What does that kind of look like? I don't know whether I've lost you or not, but let's see if you guys can, or you can kind of think what I'm thinking. Here,
From that to there.
here to here. What does that look like?
An obtuse triangle.
I'll go like
I don't know.
It's easier. What does that look like?
A falling wedge.
Very good. Oh, because everybody on the YouTube channel.
They got my back.
You know, if you
They
actually,
got my back.
Did you answer that out of your own head?
No,
or
I
did you
looked
read
over.
what they wrote?
I looked over.
If you had pulled that out and you'd said, no, I knew that. I
Oh,
would have
yeah.
been like, damn, you're good at
I'm a
this.
man of integrity.
All right, good for, hey, I like that shit. Fucking that I live by. So that's the number one reason why you and I are working together. God sees that you're you have integrity, and look at that. I don't know whether you can see, but the hairs on my arms are sticking up right now.
Good.
So that's JoJo talking right there.
Heck yeah.
So that integrity that you speak of there, that speaks volumes to me. That is, well, look at that. I zoomed right in on the camera. Sorry about that, everybody. Because I'm all about that shit, right?
Yes, sir.
Anyway, so can you tell me, falling wedges are by definition this?
Bearish.
Well, ironically enough, you had a 50% chance, right?
Okay. I was gonna say, well, it looks like it's going for like the downtrend.
Well,
there,
and that's
so.
the problem, right? Is that I don't think we're done the wedge, right? Technically, we could still do that, right?
Bullish.
But when
Dang.
we do actually break out of the
wrong.
wedge, it will be a bullish event.
Okay.
Right? And you know, our rule about trend lines. So my hunch here is that we're probably going to play around, break out through this trend line. Then if we get a W over here, oh boy.
Then we're loving it.
Get ready. And can you kind of see how this W came in kind of like that? You see how that looks like that? There?
Yeah.
So that's what we want to see here. And I mean, look at what happened, right? Boom. So be patient. I don't think there's any hurry here. Whoever asked to look at this. You can see, unfortunately, that they did break this 1.5 cent low. That technically is a bad sign, right? Lower highs and lower lows defines a bear market. So we can't really be overly bullish here. What I would say, though, is that the one saving grace about this, like I said there a moment ago, is that this downtrend line actually is pretty far away. So if you did come in here and trade this, you know, this would be the same as the other name we talked about a minute ago. where I don't think this is trending higher anytime soon. But
And ironically, or maybe not, that downtrend is going towards getting up closer towards that 6 months prior to the
yeah,
happening.
well, yeah, and especially remember what I said, buy when it snows, right?
Yes, sir.
So my hunch is that, we probably are going to work our way all the way. Notice there's November. So we start breaking out, putting in W's. There's the beginning of the new year, and away we go. That's probably what's going.
Heck,
But in the near term, let's try and sort of spin this as positively as we can. There's a fairly wide trading range here, right? And we did put in a higher low and a higher high. So that's encouraging. That's a good sign. I wouldn't have a problem. And considering the numbers, they're pretty small. That a professional trader just simply comes in and says, this looks like a 3-bar fractal that's trying to form here. So I'm going to buy on a stop on a move above that high, and I'm going to risk to a break of that. It's a pretty small risk window. Normally we would just simply do reload zones. Oh, and what a surprise. You see how that level is pretty close to 61.8. Maybe, I'm a big fan of, they say, candle body lows for trade location. And of course, Brian's favorite fib. And that's also a shark setup. So I don't mind the idea of working like a stink bid right down in there and just risking against these lows. Maybe give it a little bit of maybe something like that, right?
mm-hmm.
And we can just connect the dots. If this thing is actually, because keep in mind we are in the summer market. So I'm actually a little surprised. I mean, you can see came into June, sell in May and walk away. Do you remember us talking about that before?
Yep.
Sell in May and walk away.
So May walk away, and then right
Right. So
around the
that's what
4th of
all
July.
this is. And you can see there is May, and whoa boy, was that ever a mess, right?
And it's funny, you mentioned in the past the 4th of July is like
Right.
kind of a key date
So
and like
4th of
some
July is
action.
usually the end of that seasonal trough. And you can see,
Yeah, kind
looks
of
like
coming
4th of
back.
July weekend, that's when this thing tried to bottom it. So if this is still a summer silly season and there's going to be rallies in crypto, these gaps probably still need to be filled in. Wicks and tails like to be, even look at the size of that wick.
Yeah.
Look at the size of this one. If we do a fib off of this eye here, you remember what I said? That was sort of the beginning of the sell in May and walk away. This is probably going to be a tough one for you. I don't know whether you'll remember this or not.
All right.
But what did I say was sort of the initial fib that I always use, and I'll give you the name that I use in my school program. I call it the first stop target. And actually, this is in the little tutorial lectures that I did for the Coinigy site using retracements.
First.
What is the fib that I like to call the first stop target?
Trying to check my notes. The first 38.2.
Yeah, there you go. So remember we said these gaps like to be filled.
Yep.
We said, in fact, we affectionately on the site, we have a site alumni who actually is over at Hero Exchange right now, and just an absolute fantastic person. You and he would get along great. Basically the same kind of karma, Colin. And Colin likes to call this in this case, this is a dump. We don't want to sell here. So if we did want to participate in the bear market, we would use this zone, the 38.2 up to the 50%, which he affectionately calls, we used to call it the barbecue. In fact, actually, there was a guy on the site years ago. I actually learned this concept from a guy on the New York Stock Exchange, a gentleman by the name of Ray Burchett. He didn't like saying his name, so he used to always call him Ray Barbecue.
Ray Barbecue.
And so old timers on the site, they call this the barbecue level. So anyway, I like to call it the first stop target, 38.2. But interesting, do you remember me using the term confluence before?
Yes,
Have
sir.
you ever heard me use that expression before?
Yes.
All right, so let's talk confluence. We've got trend line resistance, maybe a pop up into there. We've got this huge gap that needs filling. We've got 38.2 right in here. And the interesting thing is we can even start doing things like chaos theory because we do actually have a W working here. So if we threw on a chaos level, where does that come to? 2.618, 4.669, 8.77. So that's good to go. Oh, hello. There's a 2.618. There's a 4.669. Interesting how 4.669 is right into that gap, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, interesting. Look how 877 is right up into that crazy wick all the way up there. So I don't mind, like believe it or not, and interesting how, what did I say was sort of the minimum risk reward that we would ideally like to take if we're going to trade this stuff? 2 to 1,
Minimum's
just to
2 to 1.
answer.
Yeah.
So you can see if I buy this off this, hell, if I just buy the W, right? That's the W there, right? And I set my 2 to 1. Interesting how the 2 to 1 is exactly that gap there. Do you think that's an accident? I don't. It's also the trend line resistance. And there's 2.618 floating out there. So I think actually that's probably actually not a bad trade, right in that area, right in there. And it's going to give you a better than 2 to 1. But by definition, what this means is if this thing craps out and loses these lows, you got to walk away. You just have no choice. So what type of investor are you? If you're a little old lady and you don't want to get that call that you've been stopped out or you have to liquidate the position,
I'm a rational investor.
A maximum risk threshold, then you take a very, very, very small bite relative to the size of your portfolio. If you are, well, Brian, I only want to buy an upward trending market, then you probably just want to leave this thing alone for now. And as we had said, this is a daily price chart. If we zoom out on the weeklies, which is usually a good sort of investment grade. Notice, you see the moving average cross here and then the W here. It's not really the best W, but it is a W nonetheless. So you can say from here, all right, we're rocking and rolling bull market. Right now, we got the moving average is bearish. And interesting how the 13 EMA is actually lining up with that 2.618 we just talked about a moment ago. So I really do like the idea of the market rallying up into this area. But from an investor perspective, I think we're still way too early. We probably want to see, like now, investors want to see the rally back to 2.618, back to that 13 EMA there, right? Then we want to see the test of the lows. Then we want to see it turn up. And of course, that'll be on the other side of the trend line. So ideally, what we'd love to see is the 2.618, the pullback, and really, ideally, we'd love to see this 100% level hold. So let's even come here. So we would ideally like to see 2.618 traded to, then the pullback, then a nice W, and then the investors can start getting all crazy bullish. So this is a weekly price chart, and interesting. We talked about usually seasonally these markets like to bottom into sort of September, October, November. So maybe it's going to look something like that. And then, interesting enough with there, we think saucer bottom, that might drag this out into something like that. And then we get ready for another seasonal trade, just exactly like we had. This was the end of 2023. What I worry about here is, do you see how sort of like last summer, you might have got caught up into this bull market? There's July, there's potential W. All right, it produced this rally, and ooh, not bad. But look, it just went boom. Oh, Jesus, new low. See you later. And then notice, like, ooh, lower low than there, then a big rally, then, oh, no, more lower lows. Into the end of that November, December window. So that's usually how venture cap acts. There's usually a bunch of tax related selling that goes on into sort of November, December, and then that's relieved in January, and that's a big reason why a lot of these venture cap names can just explode higher right out of the gate first thing in the new year. So I don't know whether that helped answer the question. I don't even know what the question was, but that's my 2 cents on Hex right now. What was the
Beautiful.
question? Was it a buy? It's cheap.
It's
Nanny
cheap.
nibbles. I don't have a problem nanny nibbling away here. Of course, to understand what that means, probably need to take a TRI education program. It's a type of risk taker. And then, of course, if you are a trader and you can manage yourself and manage your behavior, you could buy in here. We are in reload zones, but if we break these lows, I mean, you can see the size of the wedge. We could just absolutely puke out here at any given point here, and it's a long way down to next sort of key support.
Awesome.
All right, what do you think? Is that a half decent narrative there?
I'd say so.
All right, that's cool.
Looks great.
But Mr. Hex, did you get your money's worth?
I think they did. Hope they're still here. But yeah, I like the idea of so no, we have not had guests on this version of the show in years past as a resurgence of what Brian had done with our co-founders in the past. But we've actually, Brian and I have talked about that, and we kind of wanted to get our stuff ironed out, and hopefully after today, we guys say that it sounds great. So, yeah, we hopefully will get someone. So I'll look into Hans Hex and some other people on the internet.
Hans?
We'll see.
Is
Yeah,
that his name?
Hans Hex. I don't know. I'm not
I
familiar.
thought his name was Richard Hart.
Not.
I don't know who Hans Hex is.
It might be like a YouTuber or something. I'm not.
Oh, okay.
But
he's like super jazzed about Hex. All right.
yeah.
Hans Hex is brilliant and says he learned everything from TRI Investor guys. Wow, there you go.
Beautiful.
Damn, that's a good endorsement.
There we go.
Man, it's incredible. There are like trader communities popping up all over the place. There's one ex-police officer out of Romania, and he's just created an incredible trading group. And he learned everything from TRI. So I mean, it is pretty impressive to see all these trading groups popping up, and they're actually pretty smart traders. They learned correctly, and they're basically applying everything correctly, and they're even better traders than I am. That's the weird part about this is that the concepts. What I'm trying to teach you is I'm actually trying to teach you
the Jedi becomes the master.
I beg your pardon?
The Jedi becomes the master.
Yeah, well, what I'm trying to teach you guys is the process, and that's basically what I'm doing with you. Is you're brand new to this, you don't have any idea what the process is. Half of the process is, of course, learning about things like the money masters and how capital actually works. It's about risk management. It's about managing your own behavior. It's about not getting too excited about up markets. It's about actually getting interested when markets are down and nobody else is interested. It's about trying to figure out what works for you psychologically as an individual, and putting that all together into a plan, and then you executing your plan. And really, you're only as good of a trader as how well you can follow your plan. And I'll tell you, there's some times when I'm human, just like everybody else, and I make mistakes. And there are other people that are actually much, much better at this than I am. But the good part about it is I've been at this game so bloody long that I know what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
So just try and learn from me. The shit that I teach you guys works. You just got to do it. Okay, shall we do maybe one more time?
Yeah, we got.
Mr. Hex, why don't we let somebody else ask for something? So and then next week you can ask for another name.
Yeah.
So we can just spread the jelly a little bit. Were there any other requests?
Yeah, so other ones we had were OP and then IMX.
All right. OP. Where do we want to look at that?
Let me try to take a look here. 1 second. I'm doing my research quick. Finding the best on Coinigy.
And I mean, what a great learning experience for you, Hex. Eh? I mean, basically, you just got us to yourselves. Can you imagine? Can you just imagine if you went to Wall Street and said, okay, can you guys teach us how to do these charts and how to analyze this stuff? And there was just a room of like, what, a half a dozen people, and some clown who's been doing this for 30 years just sat down and talked with you. Man, it would be priceless.
I'd
I
say.
mean, I don't even think you could put a price tag on this.
No. All right. Okay. I'm trying to find which exchange it's got the most on. Coinbase, Adam says.
Right? Did we figure out where we want to look at this?
Coinbase. So let's try GDAX.
GDAX, and what do we want to look at this thing versus USD?
US
versus USD or USDT?
Yeah, let's try USDT, or whichever one's got more data, but I'm assuming they're the same.
Ooh, look at that! Lots of data here. OPP, you know me. You know what OPP stands for? Are you old enough to remember that?
No.
OPP?
I don't think so. It doesn't sound familiar. It doesn't ring a bell in my brain.
That's your assignment for next week. Is you have to tell me what OPP stands for. And it was right in your notes. It was a rap song from the late 1980s. All right. So on first blush, there's your market top. Hopefully, actually interesting. This was just from the buy when it snows rally, eh? Look at this. You want to? I mean, look at this, Joe. Can I somehow get you to see this stuff? Wow, look at that. Wow, there's so many cool things here. So, do you know what we call this 2-bar pattern right here? This here and that there. Can you see that right there? What's that 2-bar pattern?
Not railroad tracks.
No.
The institutional
This
footprint.
This is very, very powerful signal. Although it doesn't look actually like this is actually Q reversal, but it's pretty close. We won't call this a Q reversal, but in candlestick land, this is a very powerful concept. You know what that's called?
No.
That is called a bullish engulfing bar, where the market opens up below the body of this candle. Actually heads lower. I'm a bear. Look at me. I'm off. Then something happens and it turns around and it actually ends up closing above the previous candle's high. Do you see how this candle was engulfed by this candle?
Okay.
Very powerful signal. And I mean, you tell me. If you had seen that and said, well, that Beamish guy says you buy on a trade 1 tick above this high right here, would you be a happy camper if you had bought that?
Indubitably.
I mean, that's how Lambos are bought in this space, right?
Okay.
So there's your floor. What letter of the alphabet is this?
That's a nice W.
That's W.
Yes,
right?
sir.
www by the frickin' w.com. I used to say that all the time around the site. And then notice, so there's that W. If you bought that, your stop would have been like below here. And notice you never did get stopped out. Notice it goes and puts in another W. See that one?
Yep.
I mean, holy anecdotal evidence of a bottom back. Huge evidence. So there's your floor. And really, if you, somebody's here watching this and sort of like, okay, well, I want to learn how to trade. Just take a screenshot of this, right? And just say, okay, anything that I want to buy, I want to see these kind of W kind of things. And I'll go and buy that. And then you could even say, well, this is also a bigger W. So that's all another buy signal through there. Then you could say, hey, this is an even bigger W. So, and that's, usually a good trade, right? A good trade is a good trade is a good trade,
Yes, sir.
right? So, not a surprise, lots of W's. And what was the end result?
Big W.
Lambos.
Yes.
All right. Now, unfortunately, big Lambo moves. And of course, where does the public buy? Does the public buy here?
Nope. They're sitting
Does
on
the
the couch
public
up
buy
there.
here? Usually the public, sadly, comes in at top. Right? And unfortunately, like you can see, that buying up here was probably not the best idea, and back down we go. Good part about this is a really good analogy of that reload zone concept, where institutions, they're not allowed to buy up markets. They have to wait for the pullback. And I might argue that institutions did actually buy these bottoms. They sold to the public up top here. They made a bunch of money, but they want to be long. So they're going to wait for the market to work its way back down to reload zones, and they're going to reload. Does that make sense why I use the term reload zone?
Yeah.
Because they bought the original W. Remember, what did we do? I don't know whether I think I told you this before, but we actually have a name for a setup where if you see previous W's off of a level, and when you draw your fib, the 78.6 lines up. But we saw another name earlier tonight that looked exactly like this. What do we call that setup?
Confluence?
Huh?
Is that confluence?
No, there's actually a name to this setup. And actually, I'll show you in the library. Call it the shark. Well, I think this is even, Coinigy. Look at that, eh?
There we go.
This is 2017. That's how long we've been doing this here.
Yeah.
Folks. So this was the last cycle. Can you see the W?
Yeah.
See the big rally? There's 78.6. And if you had thrown your bid in off of that level, would you be a happy camper?
Very.
Sick level, man.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the pros. Pros. I'm a killer pro trader. Look at me. Anyway, we like to call that the shark setup.
Okay, yeah, that's a new term.
Yeah, so, well, I tell you what, why don't we, for fun, I'll PM you this, throw this in your, and what are you supposed to, what's the document that you should have in front of you while you're listening to Brian ramble away here? What should you have in front of you? All of you.
Oh, you can't see, but I got my trading journal. I'm always taking notes. I take it on.
What did you just say? Oh, I thought I just heard you say
my trading journal, my notebook.
Trading journal.
I was gonna say I've always got that, but I take it on like a bigger scratch piece of paper and then transfer it into my trading journal neatly and
whatever works.
More, it helps me remember it, and then it kind of gets it back down.
All right. So can you see this exact same image right here?
Yes.
So there's the W. There's 78.6. And look at that trade. Not a bad trade. You could have said, well, Brian, I'm not going to catch a falling knife, and I don't like working stink bids, but I'm going to wait for a W to come in. And if it comes in off your 78.6, fine, I'll buy it. Notice how I went down, up, down, breakout. Hello. There's a W. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
So it looks to me like this thing's telling us to step back in on the long side. If you're playing trend line breaks, of course, we'd like to see a W on the other side of this trend line. And I think that's what this is right here. So not a huge difference in price, but I don't have a problem if you said, well, Brian, I let the bottom come in, broke out above the trend line, and first W that I see, I'm going long. And so I bought that W right there. Can you see that?
Yeah.
You can see that W. It's kind of hard. So price came down, up, down, tested the lows, but didn't go through it, turned back up. Pretty sick, eh?
Yeah.
So looks to me like traders are long here. I'm not quite sure what the fundamental story is here, but not bad. Doesn't look bad. Don't know whether I'd really want to chase here. think if anything, watch this. This will be super cool. What do you think the odds are that our reload zone is going to line up with this area right in here? That's probably pretty good.
Pretty high.
There it is. 61.8 is basically that W. Eh?
Yeah.
So I might be inclined just to be patient here. Now, what you might find is because this thing is pointing up, we might work our way a bit higher. And if we do, then what you have to do is just simply keep drawing your level higher and higher and higher. I don't know where it's going to come in, but remember we talked about saucer bottoms earlier tonight?
Yep.
So, maybe this is like a head and shoulders pattern, something like that. So this is shoulder here. This is your head. There's your neckline. I would like to see that rally. Then I'd like to see the pullback. Give me a nice W in here, and away we go. And that would actually set up, you know what kind of setup that would set up for me? Holy verbiage. That would set up what I call a bot setup or trend continuation.
Okay.
So I don't know whether we've really done too much bot stuff with
We
you.
have not really.
But ideally, we want to see at least a 33%, but no more than 66. Let's do, oh, there we go, 66. So yellow. All right, that should work. So if we did just pull back to here, ideally, if this is an inverted head and shoulders, you don't want to see the market go through that one. So if we did pull back here, that would be 33%. And if we get one higher low, two higher lows, three higher lows, then I can actually start thinking bull A, B, C, D. So there's the AB, and there is the CD, and that would start painting upside objectives up here. Not bad. Which would make sense. That would just be a rally up against all these highs in here. And you've heard me. Here's a funny trivia question. Who are these guys? What do I call these guys right up in this wick up here? What do I call those guys? And these
Sleeping
guys
on the
up
couch.
here. These guys up here.
Sleeping on the couch.
Yeah, they're sleeping on the couch. Yep. We like to call them trapped bulls, right?
Yeah.
They bought up here. Then the market crapped out and they're like, oh shit, now what do I do? And if price can ever get back up into here, they are so getting it, right?
Yeah.
So, and then you've probably also heard me talk about candle body highs for trade location. So you can see we get a nice little rally up into that level. That would actually be a great shorting location for me. And my risk window would be just, I'm going to let the market play in these wicks because I know these guys want to get out. And they will have their sell orders and they will stop the rally. Kind of like you see how we rallied up here, right? We got into these wicks over here, and these guys that were along here, they started selling, and that's what drove this thing back down. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So same logic, exactly the same, no difference. So a bunch of trap bulls sitting up in here. And as we said, if this is an AB equals CD, then that's going to take us up into that neighborhood. And maybe we pop up. There's the candle body highs for trade location. That's pretty close to it. If anything, what that might say is actually, anyway, we'll leave it at that. No sense overly conjecturing this thing. So it is pointing up. I think you had a fantastic little long down in here, another little long right here. So that's like 117 and 124. So ideally, these guys, they would love to see what, like $2.50, something like that. Because if I bought at 124 and it gets to $2.50, what does that give me the ability to do?
Sell half on the double.
Yeah. And that, in essence, creates a risk-free trade, right?
Yes, sir.
So what a coincidence. You see how the AB equals CD? All these trap bulls up here. We could probably also do a fib off of this low back up to here. What do you think the odds are that this is going to be a reload short zone? So same sort of thing as I said with reload long zones. That's where institutions would reload on the long side of the market. Well, here's a really good example. 61.8 to 78.6. This is where if I was a bear, I don't really want to short down here, but I think this thing's a piece of garbage and it's going to zero. And, everybody's entitled to an opinion. I would want to hunt my short up in here.
Okay.
So can you kind of see the confluence now?
Yeah.
People that bought here, they're going to be motivated to sell up here because that's sell half on a double. And that'll give them a risk-free trade.
Yeah.
The people that bought up here, they would desperately love to get out of those shitty trades. They will be sellers up here. So we've got guys who bought here, they're going to sell here. We have guys who bought here, they're going to sell here. And then, of course, harmonic people, this is actually what's called a PRZ, or potential reversal zone, right there.
Yes.
That's a selling level. That's actually like a short setup level. So do you see the confluence in levels up here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my prognostication for that.
Awesome.
Not a bad idea.
Well, thank you for that. That turned out great. Yes. Send me that one too.
Yeah. And maybe what we can do, I don't know if you can throw these on the site somewhere. It would probably be a cool blog post.
I think
if we
so.
could just, here are some of the charts that we reviewed this
like
past show per requests. And some of our technician that we had on the show, this crazy Beamish guy, some of the levels he'd be interested in.
Yeah, I'll get that up this week
and have the charts in front of you while you're watching, kind of thing.
Yeah, I'll get that up this week. Well, what do you say? Call that one?
Yeah, 2.5 hours.
Yeah, flies by, but
yeah, well, I sure went on long about Bitcoin and cost of production, all that.
Yeah, but hey, we learned something, so I do appreciate that. And everyone who's still left here, we're running on fumes there, but we appreciate you guys. Be sure to, for those watching this tomorrow or beyond that, give us a like and subscribe. Follow the CR Investor on Twitter.
Yeah, that's my personal.
That's personal, and then
one,
PMA.
And you can see,
yeah,
it's a bit salty.
Yes. So then
the sort of corporate brand would be TRI, stands for the Rational Investor, underscore PMA, which stands for Positive Mental Attitude.
There we go.
Which is what I should probably be. But anyway.
So Brian,
this is our sort of our flagship social media page on Twitter. And also too, what I would suggest is maybe check out our YouTube page, since you are here on YouTube.
They're tagged in the description.
Maybe we could put that in.
It's in the description of every one of these videos.
Those 2 extra links in the resources. Because we do have a fairly in-depth, this is actually the show that we're doing right now. And I'll just, cheap shill here. Sorry, everyone.
No worries.
We do have a fairly in-depth YouTube channel. We do weekend shows that speak to our student body. And then also we have a weekend newsletter that we put out. This show actually was the dovetail to this old crypto show that we used to do. And we also have videos that we do daily. They're, usually about 20 minutes to half an hour. And they're pretty good summaries of what we see happening in the market on a daily basis. We also have a nice little testimonials video here. So I went toured Europe and hung out with some TRIers and got sort of just, in-person sort of commentary on what they thought about TRI and the program and stuff. So it's a really good down-to-earth sort of look at what the heck we do at TRI. And this is all free. So, I mean, there's hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and thousands of hours of video content. If you liked watching this tonight, maybe pop on over there. And maybe we can put the link to the channel in the description of this video here with you guys. So that's my ship.
Yeah. So they are tagged in the description here. Of our video.
I do see that we have the rationalinvestor.com.
And above that's the YouTube channel. I do believe. Or is that your Twitter?
I see. You have the CR Investor. I'm almost wondering whether
I'll put a
CR. Like I said, this is my personal page, and as you can see, it's in fact here's a fun assignment for you. Here's another homework assignment for you. You have to figure out who this guy is.
Will
Do you know
do.
who this guy is?
We had discussed it, but I'll have to go back and do it. I'm blanking on the name, but
So, and more importantly, what was the cryptocurrency that he was shilling, and what was the end result?
will do.
And I hate to say it, but this guy's a warning about how dangerous investing in venture capital can be.
Yes.
So he is a testament as to why you must be a rational investor. Because if you just sit and listen to these guys shill, this guy's
take
just
your
gonna
money.
steal your money.
Well,
You
everyone,
don't want that.
thank you. And on that note, I think we'll say goodbye for now.
All right.
Take care.
Bye for now.
I was hoping for that.